Most relationships do not end because people stop loving each other. They end because one person keeps waiting for the other to become emotionally present. Until waiting hurts more than leaving. And here's another truth that many people learn too late. Money can buy comfort, luxury, and influence, but it cannot buy back the person who felt unloved while standing right beside you. Welcome back to Love Stories by Mr. Johnson, the channel where every story is more than entertainment. It's a lesson about love, life, and the choices that shape our future. If you've ever been taken for granted, if you've ever loved someone who was physically there but emotionally absent, or if you've ever wondered whether a broken relationship can truly be repaired, then today's story will stay with you long after it ends. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe and join our growing family, because every week we bring you powerful American love stories filled with real-life lessons that can change the way you see relationships. Now, let me ask you something. What would you do if you spent years building an empire, only to discover that the person who mattered most had quietly given up on waiting for you? Would you fight for them? Or would you realize that some mistakes don't destroy love overnight? They destroy it one ignored conversation, one broken promise, and one lonely evening at a time. Today's story is about a billionaire who believed that providing for his wife was enough. He was wrong. By the time he understood that love is measured by presence, trust, and everyday kindness, the woman who had stood by his side was already walking away. But sometimes, losing someone isn't the end of the story. Sometimes, it's the painful beginning of becoming the person you should have been all along. This is the story of the billionaire realized too late that she was the best thing in his life. On the night his wife left him, Ethan Walker closed a deal worth $250 million. The boardroom erupted in applause. Executives shook his hand. Investors congratulated him. His phone buzzed with dozens of messages. Congratulations, Ethan. Another incredible victory. You're unstoppable. But while everyone else was celebrating, a simple text message waited at the top of his screen. It was from his wife. Can you please come home early tonight? We need to talk. The message had arrived 7 hours earlier. He never answered it. At the time, he told himself the meeting was too important. He believed there would always be another evening, another dinner, another chance to make things right. He had no idea that some conversations only come once. As Ethan drove through the streets of New York, he rehearsed the same apology he had used dozens of times. I'm sorry, work got complicated. I'll make it up to you this weekend. Everything I'm doing is for us. Those words had always been enough for him. He assumed they should be enough for her, too. After all, he had given Maya everything money could buy: a penthouse overlooking Manhattan, luxury vacations, designer clothes, a life most people only dreamed about. What else could she possibly want? He parked underground and took the private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened. Silence greeted him. That was unusual. Maya always left a small lamp on for him. She said it made the apartment feel less lonely. Tonight, the lamp was off. The living room was dark. The kitchen was spotless. The dining table was set for two. The food was cold. Ethan looked at his watch. It was almost midnight. Maya? He called. No answer. He walked into the bedroom. Her side of the closet was half empty. The framed photograph from their honeymoon was gone. The books she always read before bed had disappeared. A strange feeling settled into his chest. For years, Ethan had negotiated billion-dollar contracts without fear. But standing alone in that bedroom, he felt something he had spent his entire life trying to avoid. He felt helpless. Then he saw the envelope. It rested quietly on the dining table. His name was written across the front. He opened it. His hands were steady. His heart was not. Ethan, people think hearts break in one moment. They don't. They break little by little. Every cancelled dinner. Every promise of next weekend. Every conversation interrupted by your phone. I know you love me the best way you know how, but I no longer feel seen. I spent years hoping you would notice that I wasn't asking for expensive gifts. I was asking for you. I can't keep abandoning myself to stay in a marriage where I feel alone. So I'm leaving, not because I stopped loving you, but because I have to start loving myself. Maya. Ethan read the letter again and again. Then he laughed softly, not because it was funny, because his mind refused to believe it. She wasn't really gone. She would come back tomorrow. She always forgave him. She understood his work. She knew the pressure he lived under. He reached for his phone and called her. Straight to voicemail. He called again. No answer. Again. Nothing. He sent a text. Let's talk. No reply. For the first time in years, Ethan Walker had a problem that money couldn't solve. He walked to the window overlooking the city. Millions of lights stretched into the distance. He owned buildings, companies, luxury cars, private jets. Yet the one person who had made his house feel like a home was gone, and he didn't know how to get her back. The truth was, Ethan had spent his entire life running from pain, When he was 12 years old, his father walked out the front door with a suitcase and never came back. His mother worked 3 jobs just to survive. She loved him, but exhaustion left little room for affection. Ethan learned a lesson that shaped his entire future. Never need anyone. Need created disappointment. Distance created safety. As an adult, he became a master at protecting himself. He worked harder than everyone else. He trusted fewer people than everyone else. He built walls so high that even love couldn't climb over them. Then Maya came into his life. She wasn't impressed by wealth. She worked as an art therapist for children dealing with trauma. She believed that people could heal. She believed broken hearts could learn to trust again. The first time they met, she asked him a question no one else ever had. What makes you happy when nobody is watching? He couldn't answer. She smiled. That's okay. Most people spend their whole lives trying to figure that out. For a while, she brought color into his black and white world. She convinced him to take weekends off. She taught him to cook. She made him laugh. But slowly, the old fears returned. The closer Maya became, the more Ethan buried himself in work. Because somewhere deep inside, the frightened little boy he used to be believed that if he loved someone too much, they would leave. The sad part was that he never realized he was creating the very future he feared. There is an old saying, people don't always lose love because they are bad people. Sometimes they lose it because they never learned how to receive it. Ethan didn't know that lesson yet. He only knew that his apartment was empty. His wife's laughter was gone, and for the first time since becoming a billionaire, he felt poor. People often ask why good people stay in unhappy relationships. The answer is simple. They don't stay because they enjoy being hurt. They stay because they remember the person they first fell in love with, and they keep hoping that person will come back. Maya Walker knew exactly when she started feeling alone. It wasn't on the night Ethan forgot their anniversary. It wasn't when he cancelled their vacation. It wasn't even when he spent Christmas morning answering business calls. Loneliness had arrived much earlier. It arrived the day she realized she had stopped sharing her feelings because she already knew his answer. I have a meeting. Can we talk later? I'm doing all of this for us. At first, she believed him. Then she started asking herself a painful question. If someone truly loves you, why should you have to beg them to spend time with you? The morning after she left the penthouse, Maya sat in a small apartment she had rented weeks earlier. There were no marble floors, no floor-to-ceiling windows, no expensive furniture, just a small kitchen, a comfortable couch, and a balcony that overlooked a quiet neighborhood. For the first time in years, she could hear birds singing instead of city traffic. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she cried, not because she missed Ethan's money. She had never cared about that. She cried because she missed the man she believed he could become. On the coffee table sat an old family photograph. It was the only picture she had kept from her childhood. A little girl with bright eyes stood beside her mother. Her father was there too, smiling, looking happy. It was a lie frozen in time. A year after that picture was taken, her father left. At first, he promised to visit every weekend. Then, once a month. Then, only on birthdays. Eventually, he disappeared completely. As a child, Maya would sit by the front window, waiting for his car. She would hear every passing engine and think, maybe that's him. Most days it wasn't. Her mother once found her sitting by that window after midnight. Maya, she whispered gently, you have to come to bed. Dad said he was coming. Her mother knelt beside her. Sometimes adults make promises they can't keep. Little Maya looked up. Or promises they don't want to keep. Her mother had no answer. That question followed Maya into adulthood. She grew up believing that if she loved people enough, they would stay. She became the friend who always listened, the daughter who never complained, the woman who sacrificed her own needs to make everyone else comfortable. When she met Ethan, she saw something familiar behind his confident smile. Loneliness. He hid it well. Most people never noticed, but Maya did. She saw the little cracks in the armor, the way he avoided talking about his family, the way he changed the subject whenever emotions entered the conversation, the way he looked surprised whenever someone showed him kindness. She didn't fall in love with the billionaire. She fell in love with the wounded man beneath the expensive suit. Her friends warned her. He's married to his work. He's emotionally unavailable. You deserve someone who will actually be there. Maya always defended him. He's trying. And, in the beginning, he brought her flowers. He took spontaneous road trips. He stayed up late talking about dreams they wanted to build together. One evening, they sat on a beach in California, watching the sunset. Ethan asked, what if one day I become too busy for all of this? She laughed. I'll remind you what matters. He squeezed her hand. Don't ever let me forget. She promised. She kept that promise. The problem was that Ethan didn't. After they married, his company grew faster than anyone expected. The bigger the business became, the smaller their world became. Date nights turned into business dinners. Weekend trips became cancelled flights. Conversations became schedules. Maya understood ambition. She respected hard work. But she also knew something many people ignore. A relationship doesn't usually collapse because of one huge mistake. It collapses because of 1,000 small moments where one person feels unseen. She tried everything. She planned vacations. She organized quiet dinners. She wrote him letters because talking no longer worked. Sometimes Ethan would apologize. Sometimes he promised to do better. For a few days, things would improve. Then work would call again, and Maya would find herself eating dinner alone. One night she visited her mother. They sat on the porch drinking tea. Her mother looked at her carefully. "Are you happy?" Maya smiled automatically. "Of course." Her mother didn't smile back. "I asked if you were happy, not if your life looks successful." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She had spent so much time pretending that she forgot she didn't have to. "I don't think he sees me anymore," she whispered. Her mother reached for her hand. "Then the real question is, how long are you willing to stop seeing yourself?" That sentence changed everything. For weeks, Maya thought about it. She realized she had abandoned her own needs. She stopped painting because Ethan was busy. She stopped meeting friends because she wanted to stay available for him. She kept making herself smaller, hoping there would finally be enough room in his life. But love was never supposed to require disappearing. So, she made the hardest decision of her life. She rented a small apartment. She packed only what belonged to her. She wrote a letter, not to punish Ethan, not to make him suffer, but because she understood another important truth. You cannot heal someone by allowing them to keep hurting you. The morning after she left, her phone rang over and over again. Ethan. She looked at the screen. Her heart broke a little each time. She wanted to answer. She wanted to run back home. She wanted to believe this time would be different. But she remembered all the other times. The forgotten dinners, the empty promises, the lonely nights. She placed the phone face down. Not because she stopped loving him, because she finally loved herself enough to protect her own heart. Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan sat alone in his office. He had cancelled every meeting. The board members were shocked. His assistant had never seen him distracted. But Ethan wasn't thinking about money. He was remembering a conversation from years ago. The day Maya had asked him one simple question. What makes you happy when nobody is watching? Back then, he couldn't answer. Now he realized something even worse. The one person who had tried to teach him happiness was no longer beside him. And for the first time, he wondered if success had cost him the very life he was trying to build. Before we continue this journey, I want to hear from you. Do you think Maya made the right decision by leaving, or should she have given Ethan one more chance? Have you ever experienced a relationship where someone loved you but never truly made time for you? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your story might encourage someone who is silently going through the same pain. And if you enjoy emotional love stories that teach real-life lessons about trust, communication, self-worth and second chances, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Love Stories by Mr. Johnson, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. In Chapter 2, Ethan will learn a painful truth that many successful people discover too late. Sometimes the hardest person to face is the one staring back at you in the mirror. And while he struggles to fix the life he broke, Maya begins building a future that may no longer have a place for him. Don't miss the next chapter, because this story is only getting started. 3 days after Maya left, Ethan Walker did something his employees had never seen him do. He cancelled an important board meeting. The directors of Walker Technologies sat around a polished conference table waiting for him. The company's biggest international expansion was only weeks away, and normally Ethan would have been the first person in the room. Instead, he was sitting alone in the penthouse. The same dinner plates were still on the table. The flowers Maya had bought a week earlier had started to wilt. The apartment looked untouched, as though time itself had stopped moving. His phone rang. It was his assistant. "Mr. Walker, everyone is waiting for you." "I won't be coming." There was a long silence. "Sir, should I reschedule?" Ethan looked around the empty room. "For the first time in my life, I don't know what to do." After ending the call, he walked toward the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator. There were small notes attached to different containers. "Heat for 3 minutes. Don't forget breakfast. You always say you aren't hungry, but you need to eat." He stared at the handwriting. Maya had done little things like that every day. He had barely noticed. Now those small acts of love felt bigger than all the expensive gifts he had ever given her. His eyes wandered toward a cabinet. Inside was an old ceramic coffee mug. It was crooked and uneven. Maya had made it herself during an art class with children. She once laughed and said, "I know it's ugly." Ethan smiled. "It's terrible." "Then why do you use it every morning?" He had shrugged. "Because you made it." That memory hit him harder than he expected. For years he thought love was built through grand gestures. He never realized that relationships survive because of ordinary moments. A badly made coffee mug, a handwritten note, waiting for someone to come home. He sat down and held the mug in his hands. The penthouse had never felt so quiet. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was his older sister, Rebecca. They rarely spoke, not because they disliked each other, because Ethan had spent years keeping everyone at a distance. She had already heard the news. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. "You don't have to." "I'm not asking." 25 minutes later, she walked into the apartment carrying 2 cups of coffee. She looked around. So, Maya left. Yes. Rebecca placed the coffee on the table. "I'm surprised she stayed this long." Ethan looked at her. "What does that mean?" "It means I watched her fight for your marriage while you kept pretending everything was fine. I was working." "No, Ethan." She spoke quietly. "You were hiding." He stood up. "You don't understand the pressure I was under." Rebecca folded her arms. "I understand it better than you think." She walked toward the window. "Do you remember what happened after Dad left?" Ethan stayed silent. "You locked yourself in your room and promised yourself that nobody would ever hurt you again." He looked away. "You built a company. You built a fortune. And then, you built walls around yourself." She turned to face him. "The problem is that Maya wasn't outside those walls. She was trapped inside them with you." Ethan had spent years avoiding conversations about his childhood. Now every memory seemed impossible to escape. His father, leaving. His mother's endless exhaustion. The nights he promised himself he would never depend on anyone. Rebecca sighed. "When was the last time you asked your wife if she was happy?" He searched for an answer. Nothing came. "When was the last time you sat with her without checking your phone?" Silence. "When was the last time you listened without trying to solve the problem?" He lowered his eyes. Rebecca walked toward the door. "I love you, Ethan. That's why I'm telling you the truth. If you want Maya back, buying flowers won't fix this. Neither will expensive vacations. You need to figure out why the people who love you always end up feeling alone." The door closed behind her. Her words remained. That afternoon, Ethan drove to the community center where Maya worked. Children's drawings covered the walls. Bright colors, happy faces, simple dreams. A receptionist greeted him. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Maya Walker." The woman's expression softened. "I'm sorry, she took some personal time off. Do you know where she is?" "I don't." A little boy sitting nearby looked up at Ethan. "Are you Miss Maya's husband?" Ethan nodded. The child smiled. "She talks about you." His heart lifted for a second. "Really?" The boy nodded. "She says you're very smart." Ethan almost smiled. Then the child added, "But she also says smart people forget that hearts need attention too." The words landed like a punch. Children had a way of saying difficult truths without cruelty. Ethan thanked him and walked outside. He sat in his car for nearly an hour. He realized something that had never crossed his mind before. Maya had never spoken badly about him. Even when she was hurting, she had protected his dignity, and he had rewarded that loyalty with absence. Across the city, Maya was trying to build a new routine. She had returned to painting for the first time in years. The small apartment smelled of fresh coffee and acrylic paint. Her best friend, Vanessa, watched quietly. "You miss him?" Maya kept painting. "Yes." "Do you want to go back?" She put the brush down. "I want the man I married to come back." Vanessa nodded. "But what if he doesn't?" Maya looked at the unfinished canvas. It showed a tree in winter. Its branches were bare, no leaves, no flowers. Yet sunlight was beginning to touch the edges. "I don't know," she whispered. "I've spent so much time waiting for him that I forgot what my own life looked like." Vanessa sat beside her. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you've spent years trying to save someone who never admitted he was drowning." Maya looked out the window. She remembered all the promises, the road trips, the beach in California, the dreams they had shared. She still loved Ethan. That was the hardest part. Love had never been the problem. Safety was, trust was, being seen was. Her phone vibrated. A message appeared. It was from Ethan. "I know saying sorry isn't enough. I just need one chance to talk." She stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then she locked the phone and placed it on the table. Outside, rain began to fall. In different parts of the city, 2 people who still loved each other sat alone. One was finally learning how to feel. The other was learning how to survive without waiting. Neither of them knew that life was about to force them onto a path they never expected. And when that moment came, both would have to decide whether the past deserved another chance. Ethan Walker had spent his entire adult life believing that problems existed to be solved. If a company struggled, he invested more money. If a competitor appeared, he worked harder. If an obstacle stood in his way, he found a strategy to overcome it. But 4 days after Maya left, he was beginning to understand that a broken relationship was not a business deal. There was no contract to negotiate, no assistant who could fix the situation, no amount of money that could erase years of emotional distance. He sat alone in his office overlooking Manhattan. The city moved as if nothing had happened. People hurried to work. Traffic filled the streets. Life continued. His assistant knocked softly. "Mr. Walker, your 11 o'clock appointment is here." And Ethan frowned. "I don't have an appointment." The assistant hesitated. "Your sister made it for you." Before Ethan could ask another question, the office door opened. A man in his 60s stepped inside. He wore simple clothes and carried a leather notebook. "Mr. Walker," he said, extending his hand. "My name is Dr. Samuel Carter." Ethan did not shake it. "I don't need a doctor." Dr. Carter smiled gently. "Then perhaps think of me as someone who listens. My sister had no right to do this. You're free to leave." Ethan looked toward the window. He should leave. He had work to do. Important calls. Important meetings. Yet, for some reason, he stayed. Dr. Carter sat across from him. "Tell me about your wife." Ethan answered immediately. "She's kind." The doctor nodded. "What else?" "She's patient." "What else?" Ethan searched for more words. His mind filled with images. Maya painting. Maya laughing. Maya making coffee. Maya waiting by the window for him to come home. He realized he could describe what she did for him much more easily than he could describe who she was. The doctor watched him quietly. "When was the last time you asked her about her dreams?" Ethan looked down. "I don't remember." "When was the last time you told her what frightened you?" "I don't talk about those things." "Why not?" "Because they don't change anything." Dr. Carter leaned back. "Many successful people believe that emotions are obstacles to productivity." He paused. "But emotions don't disappear when we ignore them. They simply appear somewhere else. In anger. In distance. In silence." The room felt smaller. Ethan stood. "I don't have time for this." The doctor nodded. "That may be true. But your wife spent years making time for you." Those words followed Ethan all the way out of the building. Across the city, Maya was trying to rebuild a life that belonged to her. She had returned to the Children's Arts Center for the first time since leaving. The children ran toward her the moment she entered. "Miss Maya, we missed you." One little girl hugged her tightly. "Are you sad?" Maya smiled. "A little." The child thought for a moment. "My grandma says sad people should draw the storm instead of hiding from it." Maya laughed softly. "Your grandma sounds very wise." The girl nodded proudly. "She says storms don't last forever." For the next few hours, Maya forgot about everything else. She helped the children paint. Some painted houses, some painted animals. One little boy painted a bridge. "What is that?" Maya asked. "It connects 2 places." "Why did you paint it?" He looked at her seriously. "Because sometimes people want to come back, but they don't know how." She stared at the picture. The bridge stretched across a river. 2 people stood on opposite sides. Neither was moving. That evening, Ethan returned to the penthouse. He noticed something he had never paid attention to before. The apartment was filled with Maya, not her belongings, her habits, the bookshelf she had organized, the plants she watered every morning, the candle she lit during dinner. He suddenly understood something. She had spent years turning a luxury apartment into a home. He had simply lived there. He walked into a storage room, looking for old files. Instead, he found a cardboard box. On the side, Maya had written in black marker, "Our memories." He opened it. Inside were movie tickets, old photographs, postcards from trips they had taken, a dried flower from their first date. At the bottom of the box lay a notebook. He recognized it immediately. It was Maya's journal. He knew he should not read it. He closed the notebook. Then he looked at it again. Slowly, he opened the first page. The earliest entries were full of joy. "Today, Ethan burned dinner, trying to impress me. He pretends not to like dancing, but he smiled the whole time. He works too much, but I think he is trying to believe that someone can love him without conditions." As the pages continued, the words began to change. "He missed dinner again. I know he is tired, but I wish he would talk to me. Sometimes I sit beside him and wonder if he even notices I'm there." Ethan's chest tightened. He turned another page. "Today, I almost told him I was lonely, but he looked so stressed that I stayed quiet. Maybe tomorrow will be better." Another page. Tomorrow wasn't better. Another. "I miss my husband, and he lives in the same house as me." His hands started shaking. Then he reached the final entry. "I don't think Ethan is a bad man. I think he is a hurt little boy who never learned that people can stay, but I cannot spend the rest of my life proving that I won't leave, while he keeps leaving me emotionally. I hope one day he heals. I just don't know if I can wait anymore. Ethan closed the journal. He sat on the floor for a long time. For years, he believed Maya didn't understand him. Now he realized she had understood him better than anyone. She knew exactly why he pushed people away. She simply could not survive it anymore. The next morning, Maya visited her mother. The older woman opened the door and immediately noticed the sadness in her daughter's eyes. "Did he contact you?" Maya nodded. "He wants to talk." "And what do you want?" "I don't know." Her mother poured 2 cups of tea. "When I was your age, I thought love meant never giving up on someone. What do you think now?" "I think love also means knowing when someone has to fight for themselves." Maya looked out the window. "I still love him." "I know. What if he changes?" Her mother smiled sadly. "Real change takes time. It cannot happen because someone is afraid of losing you. It has to happen because they finally understand themselves." Maya held her cup tightly. Deep inside, she hoped Ethan could change, but hope had disappointed her before. She could not build a future on promises, not anymore. Later that night, Ethan stood outside the arts center. The lights were off. The building was empty. He looked through the glass doors. On one wall hung dozens of children's paintings. His eyes stopped on one picture. It showed a bridge over a river. 2 people stood on opposite sides. A small sentence was written beneath it. "The hardest bridges to cross are the ones built by pride." Ethan stood there long after the streetlights came on. For the first time in his life, he accepted a truth he had spent years avoiding. He had not lost Maya because he worked too much. He had lost her because he never let her see the parts of himself that needed love the most. And somewhere across the city, the woman he still loved was slowly learning how to live without him. Neither of them knew it yet. But fate was preparing a meeting that neither could avoid. When it happened, one question would change everything. Was love enough to begin again, or had they already said goodbye forever? 2 weeks passed. Ethan stopped calling. He stopped sending flowers. He stopped asking mutual friends where Maya was. At first, Maya thought he had given up. A small part of her was relieved. Another part was hurt. She had spent years wishing he would understand her pain. Now she found herself wondering if he had simply accepted losing her. The truth was very different. Ethan had learned something during those 2 weeks. If he truly loved Maya, he could not pressure her into returning. He could not apologize his way out of years of neglect. For the first time in his life, he was trying to become a better man without expecting a reward. Every Wednesday afternoon, he met with Dr. Carter. The sessions were uncomfortable. Dr. Carter asked questions Ethan had spent years avoiding. "What did you feel when your father left?" "I don't know." "What did you tell yourself after that?" Ethan stayed silent. The doctor waited. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I told myself that needing people was dangerous." "And how has that belief affected your marriage?" Ethan looked out the window. "I spent my whole life making sure nobody could abandon me." He paused. "I never realized I was the one pushing everyone away." Dr. Carter nodded. "Many people confuse independence with emotional isolation. They are not the same thing." That evening, Ethan walked home instead of calling for his driver. The city looked different when he wasn't rushing. He noticed couples sitting in small restaurants, parents walking with children, friends laughing together. Simple moments. Moments he had convinced himself he was too busy for. As he reached his apartment building, his elderly doorman smiled. "Good evening, Mr. Walker." "Good evening, Frank." The old man looked surprised. It was the first real conversation they had ever had. "You doing all right, sir?" Ethan thought about lying. Instead, he answered honestly, "No." Frank nodded slowly. "My wife passed away 8 years ago." Ethan looked at him. "She used to tell me something." "What was that?" "Don't wait until someone is gone before you become the person they needed." The elevator doors opened. Ethan thanked him quietly. Those words stayed with him all night. Across the city, Maya was rebuilding pieces of herself. She had started painting again, not for work, not for anyone else, just for herself. Her apartment walls were slowly filling with landscapes and portraits. Some were bright, some were dark. Each one carried emotions she had hidden for years. One Saturday morning, Vanessa knocked on her door. "I have a surprise." "I'm not in the mood." "Too bad." Vanessa smiled. "You're coming with me." An hour later, they arrived at a neighborhood art festival. Music played through the park. Families walked between small tents. Local artists displayed their work. Maya laughed softly. "I haven't been to one of these in years." "I know." Vanessa looked at her. "You stopped doing a lot of things." Maya knew she was right. Without realizing it, she had built her entire schedule around Ethan's availability. She had waited for phone calls, cancelled plans, moved her own life aside. Now she was learning what freedom felt like. As they walked through the festival, Maya stopped in front of a painting. It showed a woman standing at the edge of the ocean. Behind her was a beautiful house. In front of her was an unknown horizon. The title read, "Sometimes leaving is an act of hope." Maya stared at it. Vanessa touched her arm. "What are you thinking?" "That I spent years believing leaving meant failure. And now? Now I think staying in the wrong situation can also be a kind of failure." She didn't notice the man standing on the other side of the exhibit. Ethan. He had come to the festival because Dr. Carter suggested he spend time outside work. He had no idea Maya would be there. For a moment, neither of them moved. The noise around them seemed to disappear. Months of memories rushed back at once. The beach in California, their wedding day, late-night conversations, the lonely dinners, the goodbye letter. Maya's heart raced. Ethan looked different. Not because of his clothes, because he seemed tired, human. He took one careful step forward. "Maya," she swallowed. "Hello, Ethan." Neither knew what to say. He wanted to tell her everything. That he was trying, that he finally understood, that he missed her every single day. But Dr. Carter's voice echoed in his mind. Listening is more important than explaining. So he simply asked, "How are you?" Maya almost laughed. For years, she had wanted him to ask that question. Now she didn't know how to answer. "I'm getting better." He nodded. "I'm glad." The silence between them was awkward, but it was honest. No pretending, no rehearsed speeches, just two people carrying the weight of unfinished love. Vanessa walked over. She recognized Ethan immediately. Her expression hardened. "Maya, are you ready to go?" Maya looked at Ethan. He understood. "You should go." She hesitated. Then she turned and walked away. Ethan watched until she disappeared into the crowd. He did not follow. He did not call her name. For the first time, he respected the distance she had asked for. That night, Maya sat on her balcony thinking about the encounter. She had expected to feel anger. Instead, she felt confusion. Ethan had not begged. He had not made excuses. He had not tried to convince her to come home. He had simply asked how she was, and somehow, that hurt even more. Meanwhile, Ethan opened his laptop. For years, he had worked late into the night. Tonight, he closed it after only a few minutes. He walked to the bookshelf and pulled out a notebook. Dr. Carter had given it to him. "Write down the things you never say." Ethan stared at the empty page. Slowly, he began writing. "I was afraid that if you saw the broken parts of me, you would leave." He stopped, then continued. "I didn't realize that hiding those parts was exactly what made you leave." He closed the notebook. Outside his window, rain began to fall. Across the city, Maya stood on her balcony watching the same storm. Neither of them knew that their brief meeting had changed something. A door that had been completely closed now stood slightly open. But old fears do not disappear overnight. And before either of them could think about a second chance, the past was about to return in a way neither of them expected. There is a strange thing about old wounds. You can ignore them for years. You can bury them under work, success, or even love. But the moment life becomes quiet, they have a way of finding you again. A week after seeing Maya at the art festival, Ethan was sitting alone in his office when his assistant walked in. "Mr. Walker, there's someone here to see you." "I don't have any appointments." The assistant looked uncomfortable. "He says he's family." Ethan frowned. He had very little family left. His sister always called before visiting. Slowly he stood. "Who is it?" The assistant hesitated. "He said his name is Daniel Walker." The room suddenly felt cold. Ethan had not heard that name in 26 years. His father, the man who walked out with a suitcase and never looked back. The man who missed birthdays, graduations, and every important moment of his son's life. The man Ethan had spent his entire life pretending no longer mattered. "I told him you were busy," the assistant continued, "but he said he would wait." Ethan walked toward the reception area. An older man sat quietly by the window. His hair had turned grey. His shoulders looked smaller than Ethan remembered. When he stood, his eyes filled with emotion. Ethan, the billionaire, looked at him without expression. "What are you doing here?" Daniel swallowed. "I know I don't deserve your time." "You're right. I just wanted to see you. You've had 26 years. The older man lowered his head. "I made mistakes." Ethan laughed once. "Mistakes? Forgetting an umbrella is a mistake. Leaving your family is a choice." People in the office quietly looked away. No one wanted to witness the conversation. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to have this." Ethan didn't take it. "I spent half my life waiting for you." He took one step closer. "Do you know what happens to a little boy when his father never comes back?" Daniel remained silent. "He learns not to trust anyone." He learns that love disappears. He grows into a man who pushes away the people who care about him. The older man's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry." Ethan shook his head. "No. You are sorry because you're old. You're sorry because life finally caught up with you. But where were you when my mother worked herself sick? Where were you when I graduated? Where were you when I got married?" Daniel couldn't answer. Ethan pointed toward the door. "Leave." The old man placed the envelope on a table. "I hope one day you read it." Then he walked away. Ethan stood perfectly still. His assistant approached carefully. "Sir, I want everyone to leave." Within minutes, the office was empty. Ethan stared at the envelope. He wanted to throw it away. Instead, he locked it inside his desk. That same afternoon, Maya was helping children prepare for a small art exhibition. One little boy sat quietly in the corner. He wasn't painting. He wasn't talking. Maya walked over. "Do you want to tell me what's wrong?" The child shrugged. "My dad was supposed to come today." She felt her heart tighten. "Maybe something happened. He always says that." The little boy looked at the floor. "My mom says it's not my fault." He looked up at Maya. "But what if she's just trying to make me feel better?" Maya sat beside him. "When adults leave, children often think they did something wrong." The boy nodded. "Did I?" She answered without hesitation. "No. You didn't make that choice." The child was quiet for a moment. "Did someone leave you too?" Maya smiled sadly. "Yes." "Did they come back?" She thought about Ethan. She thought about her father. She thought about all the waiting she had done in her life. Sometimes people come back, and sometimes they don't. What's important is remembering that your value doesn't depend on whether someone stays. The little boy hugged her. Maya closed her eyes. She wished someone had told her that when she was a child. That evening, Ethan finally opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. His father had written only a few pages. "Ethan, I don't expect forgiveness. I wasn't brave enough to be the father you needed. Every year, I wanted to come back. Every year I convinced myself it was too late. Then, too much time passed. I heard about your success. I heard about your marriage. I stayed away because I believed you were better off without me. Now I know that silence can hurt people more than honesty. I spent my whole life running from my failures. Don't make the same mistake with the people you love." Ethan stopped reading. His hands were shaking. He hated the letter. He hated that part of him understood it. He hated that he had spent years doing exactly the same thing, running, avoiding, believing distance would protect everyone. His phone rang. It was Dr. Carter. "How are you?" Ethan almost said he was fine. Instead, he answered honestly. "My father came back." There was a long pause. "And how do you feel?" "I don't know." "Angry?" "Yes." "Hurt?" "Yes." "Afraid?" Ethan closed his eyes. "Yes." The doctor spoke softly. "The people who hurt us often shape the people we become. But they do not have to decide who we remain." Meanwhile, Maya returned to her apartment. She found an envelope under her door. There was no name on it. Inside was a single photograph. It showed her and Ethan sitting on a beach years earlier. She turned it over. A short message was written on the back. "Thank you for teaching me that love is not something people should have to earn." There was no signature. She knew exactly who had written it. She sat on the couch, holding the picture. For the first time since leaving, she cried without trying to stop herself. She wasn't crying because she wanted to go back. She wasn't crying because she regretted leaving. She was crying because she could finally see that Ethan was beginning to understand. The problem was that understanding did not erase the past. Broken trust does not heal because someone has changed. It heals because that change survives the test of time. Maya placed the photograph inside a drawer and closed it. She whispered to herself, "I hope you're becoming the man I always believed you could be." Across the city, Ethan stood by his apartment window. For years, he blamed his father for teaching him that people leave. Tonight, he realized another painful truth. He had allowed that lesson to control his entire life, and unless he learned to let go of the past, he would lose far more than his marriage. He would lose the chance to become someone different. Outside, the lights of New York stretched across the night. Somewhere in that city, the woman he loved was learning to live without him. And for the first time, Ethan accepted that if he ever wanted a future with her, he would first have to make peace with the boy who had been waiting at the window for a father who never came home. A month passed. For the first time since he was 22 years old, Ethan Walker was no longer the first person to arrive at the office. He stopped answering emails at midnight. He stopped canceling weekends. He even delegated projects that he would once have controlled himself. His employees were confused. The board members were worried. One afternoon, his business partner, Richard Lawson, walked into his office and closed the door. What is going on with you? Ethan looked up from his desk. What do you mean? You've turned down 3 international trips. You left work at 5 yesterday. And today you missed an investor lunch. Ethan simply nodded. Richard laughed. Who are you? And what have you done with the real Ethan Walker? Normally, Ethan would have laughed too. Instead, he answered quietly, I think I've spent my whole life hiding behind work. Richard's smile disappeared. Because of Maya? Ethan looked out the window. Because of myself. Richard sat down across from him. They had worked together for nearly 15 years. They had built companies, survived financial crises, and closed impossible deals. Yet they had almost never spoken about personal matters. I always admired you, Richard admitted. You never seemed distracted by emotions. Ethan smiled sadly. I wasn't free from emotions. I was running from them. The room grew quiet. Richard leaned forward. My divorce happened 7 years ago. Ethan looked surprised. I know. You know why it happened? Ethan shook his head. Because I thought providing was the same thing as loving. The words hit him harder than he expected. Richard looked toward the family photo on his desk. I missed birthdays. I missed school plays. I kept telling myself that my family would understand. He sighed. They understood. They just couldn't live with it forever. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Richard stood. If you still have a chance to become a better man. He walked toward the door. Don't waste it, trying to become a richer one. That evening, Ethan arrived early for his appointment with Dr. Carter. The older man noticed immediately. You've changed. I've changed my schedule. No. The doctor smiled. You've changed your priorities. Ethan sat down. I keep thinking about my father. What about him? I spent years believing that I was nothing like him. And now? I'm afraid I became him in a different way. Dr. Carter nodded. Your father left physically. You left emotionally. Ethan closed his eyes. I never wanted to hurt Maya. I know, but intention and impact are not the same thing. The sentence stayed with him. How many times had he believed good intentions were enough? How many times had Maya waited while he promised things would get better? Dr. Carter opened a notebook. I want you to answer one question. Ethan nodded. What kind of husband do you want to be if Maya never comes back? The billionaire frowned. I don't understand. If your only reason for changing is to win her back, then the change won't last. The room fell silent. Ethan had never considered that possibility. What if Maya never returned? Could he still become a different person? Could he still heal? After several minutes, he answered, I want to become someone who doesn't make the people he loves feel alone. Dr. Carter smiled. Meanwhile, Maya was learning that healing had its own challenges. Freedom was beautiful. But freedom could also feel empty. She had rebuilt old friendships. She painted almost every day. She laughed more often. Yet there were moments when she reached for her phone to tell Ethan something, before remembering they no longer shared a life. One Saturday morning, Vanessa convinced her to join a volunteer program. They spent the day helping renovate a community library for children. Maya painted colorful murals on the walls. A little girl watched her carefully. You're really good. Maya smiled. Thank you. Did you always want to be an artist? No. What did you want to be? She thought for a moment. Happy. The child giggled. That's not a job. Maya laughed too. No, but it takes work. Later that afternoon, while carrying boxes of books, Maya accidentally bumped into an older woman. I'm so sorry. The woman smiled warmly. No harm done. As they organized the books together, they started talking. The woman's name was Eleanor. She had been married for 42 years before losing her husband. Were you happy together? Maya asked. Eleanor smiled. Not every day. The answer surprised her. The older woman continued. We had arguments. We disappointed each other. We made mistakes. So, what made it last? Eleanor placed a book back on the shelf. Every time one of us was wrong, we cared more about understanding than about winning. Maya looked down. What if only one person is trying? Then, eventually, they become exhausted. The older woman looked directly at her. A relationship should never require one person to carry both hearts. Those words stayed with Maya long after she returned home. She sat on her balcony with a cup of tea. For the first time, she allowed herself to admit something. She did not miss the lonely nights. She did not miss waiting for Ethan to come home. She missed the man she had met years ago. The man who laughed easily. The man who burned dinner trying to impress her. The man who looked at her as though she mattered more than anything else. She wondered where that version of Ethan had gone. What she didn't know was that he was asking himself the exact same question. A few days later, Ethan received an unexpected invitation. It was from his sister. Family dinner. Friday, 7 o'clock. No excuses. He almost declined. Then he remembered how many invitations he had ignored over the years. Friday evening arrived. Rebecca opened the door and hugged him. Her 2 children ran into the living room. "Uncle Ethan." The younger one held up a toy airplane. "Will you play with us?" Normally, Ethan would have apologized and checked his emails. This time, he sat on the floor. For nearly an hour, they built imaginary airports and flew toy planes through the house. Rebecca watched from the kitchen. She smiled quietly. Later, during dinner, her oldest son asked, "Uncle Ethan, why don't you visit more often?" The question was innocent, but Ethan had no answer. The little boy continued, "Mom says people get busy." Rebecca looked embarrassed, but Ethan shook his head. "No." He smiled gently. "Sometimes grown-ups forget what matters." The child nodded, as though that made perfect sense. After dinner, Rebecca walked him to the front door. "I saw you playing with the kids. They're good kids. They adore you." Ethan looked toward the house. "I've missed a lot, haven't I?" Rebecca nodded. "But you're here now." As Ethan drove home, he realized something. Healing wasn't only about repairing his marriage. It was about repairing the parts of his life he had neglected. His family, his friendships, himself. When he arrived at the penthouse, he found an old photograph inside a drawer. It was taken on the day he married Maya. They were laughing. Neither was looking at the camera. They were looking at each other. He traced the edge of the picture with his fingers, then he placed it back in the drawer. He was finally beginning to understand that love was not proven by grand speeches. It was built through small moments that people chose every day. And somewhere across the city, Maya was also changing. Neither of them knew it, but life was quietly preparing another meeting. This time, they would not simply pass each other by. This time, they would have to speak. 2 weeks later, New York welcomed the first warm days of spring. The city parks were crowded. Street musicians returned to the sidewalks. Small cafes filled with people escaping the long winter. Maya had promised Vanessa that she would finally display some of her paintings at a local charity art exhibition. At first, she refused. "I'm not ready." Vanessa crossed her arms. "You've spent years helping other people believe in themselves. It's time you listened to your own advice." Maya smiled. "You never give up, do you?" "No. And neither should you." By Saturday morning, her paintings hung neatly along one side of the gallery. Landscapes, portraits, scenes filled with quiet emotions. Visitors stopped to admire them. Many of them stood in front of one particular painting. It showed a large house with every window glowing. Outside, a woman stood alone in the garden. The title read, "A home is not the same as a house." An older man studied the painting for several minutes. "It feels lonely," he said. Maya nodded. "It is." He looked at her. "Did you paint it from imagination?" She answered honestly, "No." Before he could ask another question, another voice came from behind her. "I know that house." Maya froze. She turned slowly. Ethan stood a few feet away. He was wearing a simple navy jacket instead of one of his expensive business suits. There was no security team, no assistant, just him. Vanessa noticed him immediately. She stepped closer to Maya. "Do you want me to ask him to leave?" Maya looked at Ethan. He wasn't moving. He wasn't trying to come closer. "No," she said softly. Vanessa studied her face. "I'll be nearby." Then she walked away. For a few seconds, neither Ethan nor Maya spoke. The gallery buzzed with conversations around them. Yet it felt as though they were the only 2 people there. Ethan looked at the painting again. "You always said a house should make people feel safe." Maya folded her arms. "I remember. I should have listened." She looked at him carefully. Months ago, those words would have sounded like another apology. Today, they sounded different, quieter. He wasn't asking for anything. He was simply telling the truth. "How have you been?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "I'm learning that I don't know myself as well as I thought." She almost laughed. "That's a very strange answer. I've been hearing that a lot lately." For the first time since they separated, the conversation felt natural. Not easy, but real. Ethan glanced around the room. "These are your paintings?" "Yes. They're beautiful." She looked at him suspiciously. "You don't have to say that." "I know." He looked back at the paintings. "I never realized how much of yourself you put into your art." She felt a small ache in her chest. "I don't think you realized a lot of things." He lowered his eyes. "You're right." There was no argument, no defense, no excuse, just acceptance. Maya wasn't prepared for that. For years, every difficult conversation had turned into explanations about work, deadlines, responsibilities, pressure. Now, the man standing in front of her wasn't hiding behind any of those things. A young couple approached to look at another painting. They recognized Ethan immediately. "Are you Ethan Walker?" the man asked. Ethan nodded politely. "I love your company," the stranger said. "It's incredible what you've built." "Thank you." The couple smiled and walked away. Maya looked at him. "That used to make you happy. It used to make me feel important. And now?" He looked around the gallery. "Now I think there are more important things." She didn't answer. She wasn't ready to believe him. Not yet. A few hours later, the exhibition ended. People slowly began leaving. Maya carried a box of supplies toward her car. As she lifted it, the bottom gave way. Paintbrushes and papers scattered across the parking lot. Without saying a word, Ethan knelt and started picking them up. Years ago, he would have called an employee, or hired someone else to do it. Maya noticed. So the billionaire finally learned how to clean up a mess. He smiled. "I'm trying." They gathered the last of the supplies. Then Ethan stood. "I owe you an apology." She looked away. "You've apologized before." "I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me." The wind moved gently through the trees. "I just want to say something I should have said a long time ago." Maya waited. "I kept believing that if I worked hard enough, one day I'd have enough time for us." He swallowed. "I never realized that every day I postponed loving you properly, I was using up the time we actually had." She felt tears threatening to appear. She hated that part of her still cared. "You hurt me, Ethan." "I know." "I stopped recognizing myself." "I know. I begged you to see me." "I know." His voice almost broke. "And I have to live with the fact that I didn't." She closed her eyes. For years, she had wanted him to understand. Now that he finally did, she realized understanding could not erase pain. She opened her eyes again. "What happens now?" Ethan answered honestly. "I don't know. I'm not asking you to come home. I'm not asking for another chance. I'm just trying to become someone who tells the truth." She looked at him for a long moment. Then she asked a question she had carried in her heart for years. "Why were you always so afraid to let me in?" He stood silently. Finally he answered, "Because I believed that if you saw how broken I was." He looked away. "You would leave." Maya felt her heart ache. "I did leave." He nodded. "But not because you were broken." He looked at her. She continued softly, "I left because you wouldn't let me stand beside you." The words settled between them. Neither could deny them. Neither could change them. A car horn sounded in the distance. People walked through the parking lot. Life continued around them. Maya picked up her bag. "I should go." Ethan nodded. "Thank you for talking to me." She started walking toward her car. Then she stopped. Without turning around, she spoke. "I'm glad you're getting help." His eyes widened slightly. She continued, "I hope you keep going." "Not for me. For you." Then she got into her car and drove away. Ethan remained where he was. He wasn't happy. He wasn't hopeful. But for the first time since she left, he felt something he hadn't expected. Peace. Because he had finally spoken honestly, and because Maya had finally seen that his changes were real. Not complete, not perfect, but real. Across the city that evening, Maya sat by her apartment window. She replayed the conversation over and over. Vanessa noticed her quiet mood. "How did it go?" Maya looked out at the lights of New York. "He wasn't the man I left." Vanessa smiled. "Is that a good thing?" Maya took a long breath. "I don't know." She touched the edge of a photograph sitting on her table. The old Ethan had made her feel alone. The new Ethan seemed to be learning how to stay, but trust had been broken slowly. And she knew it would only return the same way. Slowly. Neither of them realized it, but life was about to place them in a situation where they would have no choice but to depend on each other again. And this time, actions, not promises, would decide the future of their story. A week after the art exhibition, Maya received a phone call that changed her plans. "Miss Walker?" "Yes." "This is Grace Children's Center." Maya smiled. She volunteered there whenever she had free time. "We're organizing a summer arts fundraiser." "That sounds wonderful." "We were hoping you could lead the event." She was about to accept when the director added, "We also received a large donation from Walker Technologies." Maya's smile faded. She knew exactly who was behind it. "I appreciate the support," she said carefully, "but I hope this isn't connected to me." The director laughed softly. "Actually, the donation was anonymous." Maya remained quiet. There was only one request. What was it? That every child who wanted to participate would have the opportunity, regardless of their family's financial situation. The call ended. Maya sat in silence. That was exactly the kind of thing Ethan would have done years ago. Quietly, without asking for recognition, she pushed the thought away. People could do good things and still be wrong for each other. She had learned that lesson the hard way. Across town, Ethan was finishing another session with Dr. Carter. "You made the donation," the doctor said. Ethan nodded. "Why anonymously?" "Because it wasn't a gift for Maya. It was for the children." Dr. Carter smiled. "And how does that feel?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Different." "In what way?" "I spent years doing good things because they improved my reputation." He looked out the window. "This time, I didn't need anyone to know." The doctor closed his notebook. "What are you learning?" Ethan answered quietly. "That kindness loses something when it expects applause." The fundraiser arrived faster than anyone expected. Volunteers filled the community center. Artists prepared their displays. Children ran through the hallways carrying paint and paper. Maya moved from room to room, making sure everything was ready. She had almost forgotten about Ethan. Then the director approached her. "We're still missing a few volunteers." "I can help." "You already are." The director smiled. "Our anonymous donor offered to send people from his company." Before Maya could ask another question, several volunteers walked through the front doors. Among them was Ethan. He wasn't wearing an expensive suit. He carried folding tables on his shoulder and boxes of supplies in his hands. He saw Maya. She saw him. Neither spoke. The director clapped her hands. "Perfect." She pointed toward Ethan. "Can you help Miss Walker set up the art room?" Maya almost refused, but dozens of children were already arriving. She nodded. "Follow me." They walked down the hallway in silence. When they reached the room, Ethan started arranging chairs. Maya unpacked paint supplies. Neither knew what to say. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "You don't have to worry." She looked at him. "I'm here to volunteer." "Nothing else?" She nodded. "Good." The room became quiet again. A little girl suddenly ran inside. "Miss Maya!" The child stopped when she saw Ethan. "Who's he?" Maya smiled. "He's helping us today." The little girl looked at Ethan carefully. "Can you paint?" He almost laughed. "Not very well." "That's okay." She handed him a brush. "I'm not very good either." For the next hour, Ethan sat beside children painting colorful pictures. He spilled water twice, mixed the wrong colors, accidentally covered part of his shirt in blue paint. The children laughed. So did he. Maya stood across the room watching. She realized she had never seen him like this. Relaxed. Present. One little boy tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Can you help me?" "What are you drawing?" "A family." The child pointed to the paper. "This is my mom." "This is me." Then he hesitated. "I don't know how to draw my dad." Ethan sat quietly. "Why not?" He moved away. The room seemed to disappear. The little boy looked down. "My mom says he loves me." "Do you think people can love you and still leave?" Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. He thought about his own father. He thought about Maya. Finally he answered, "I think people sometimes make bad choices. But those choices are never a child's fault." The little boy nodded. Then he handed Ethan another crayon. "Can you help me finish the picture?" Ethan took it. Together, they finished the drawing. Maya watched from across the room. She saw the expression on Ethan's face, the sadness, the gentleness, the honesty. For years, she had wanted him to share those parts of himself. Now, they appeared naturally. Not because she asked, because he had stopped hiding. During lunch, volunteers gathered outside. Maya sat alone beneath a tree. A few moments later, Ethan approached. "Is this seat taken?" She looked at the empty bench. "No." He sat down, leaving enough space between them. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. Birds sang nearby. Children laughed in the distance. After a while, Ethan spoke. "I found one of your old notes." She looked at him. "What note?" "The one you left inside the refrigerator." Her cheeks turned slightly red. "The one that said I should eat breakfast." A small smile appeared on her face. "You never liked breakfast." "I know." He looked down. "You still remembered." Maya stared at the ground. "I remembered a lot of things." Neither of them spoke for a while. Then Ethan asked, "Have you been painting every day?" She looked surprised. "How did you know?" "You always painted when you were happy." She looked at him carefully. "You noticed that?" "I notice more things now." Those words stayed with her, not because they solved anything, but because they reminded her of the man she had once loved. Before either of them could continue, the director called for help. They stood at the same time. As Maya turned to leave, her foot slipped on the wet grass. She lost her balance. Without thinking, Ethan reached out and caught her. For one brief second, they stood close together. Neither moved, neither spoke. Then Maya gently stepped back. "Thank you." "You're welcome." The moment passed, but something had changed. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just a quiet reminder that beneath all the pain, the connection between them still existed. Neither of them realized that someone had been watching. Near the entrance of the community center stood an older man, Daniel Walker, Ethan's father. He had come to deliver a donation for the children. Instead, he found himself looking at the son he had abandoned, and the woman who had taught that son how to love. Daniel quietly turned away. But before he left, Maya noticed him. She had seen his photograph years ago. She knew exactly who he was, and she knew that Ethan had no idea his past had just stepped back into his life. Maya stood frozen near the entrance of the community center. The older man had already turned away, but she recognized him immediately. Years earlier, while helping Ethan organize old family photographs, she had seen a picture of a younger Daniel Walker. The face had changed. The hair had turned gray, but the eyes were the same. Ethan's eyes. She watched as the old man walked slowly toward the parking lot. For a moment, she thought about saying nothing. It wasn't her place. The relationship between a father and son was complicated, especially when that father had disappeared for more than 20 years. Then she remembered something Ethan once told her. When my father left, I stopped believing that people stayed. Back then, she hadn't fully understood those words. Now she did. The event ended a few hours later. Children carried home their paintings. Volunteers packed supplies. The hall slowly became quiet. Ethan loaded boxes into a storage room. When he came back, he noticed Maya waiting for him. There was someone here today, she said. He smiled slightly. A lot of people were here. No. Her expression was serious. I think your father came. The smile disappeared. For a second, Ethan simply looked at her. Then he shook his head. No. I saw him. He wouldn't come here. He did. Ethan turned away. He already found me once. Maya stepped closer. Did you talk to him? I told him to leave. She nodded slowly. I think he came back today. Ethan laughed softly. There was no humor in it. You know what's strange? What? I spent half my life wishing he would come back. And now I spend the other half wishing he would disappear. Neither spoke. Finally, Maya asked, Are you okay? The question caught him off guard. He had spent so much time trying to understand her pain that he forgot she could still see his, I don't know. It was the same answer he had given at the art exhibition. This time, Maya understood it. That evening, Ethan drove home alone. His mind refused to settle. He kept thinking about his father, the letter, the office visit, now this. As he entered the penthouse lobby, Frank, the elderly doorman, called out to him. Mr. Walker. Ethan turned. Someone left this for you. It was a small envelope. There was no stamp, no address, just his name. He already knew who had written it. He took the envelope upstairs. For almost an hour, it remained unopened on the kitchen table. Finally, he sat down and unfolded the paper. Ethan, I came to the community center today because I heard children needed help. I also hoped to see the kind of man you became. I saw enough to know that you are trying to become someone better. I don't deserve to ask anything from you. But there are truths you should know. I wasn't the only one who left. Your mother asked me to stay away after our divorce because she believed I would continue disappointing you. She thought it would be easier if you hated me. Maybe she was right. Maybe she was wrong. I accepted her decision because I believed I would only make your life worse. That doesn't excuse my silence. I should have fought harder. I should have fought for you. If one day you want answers, I'll be waiting. Ethan lowered the letter. His entire childhood suddenly felt uncertain. He had spent years believing one version of the story. What if there was more? His first instinct was anger. His second was confusion. His third was something he didn't expect. He wanted to ask his sister. The next afternoon, Ethan drove to Rebecca's house. She opened the door and immediately noticed his expression. What's wrong? He handed her the letter. She read it slowly. Then she sighed. You knew? Rebecca looked away. I knew some of it. His voice rose. You knew? I was older than you. I remember the arguments. I remember Mom crying. I remember Dad wanting to come back. Ethan stared at her. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because you were a child. And because Mom believed she was protecting you. He sat down heavily. So, my whole life. Rebecca interrupted gently. No. Your whole life, you were hurt. That part is still true. She sat beside him. But pain is complicated. Sometimes, good people make bad decisions. And sometimes, those decisions affect generations. Ethan thought about Maya. He thought about all the ways he had protected himself, all the ways he had unknowingly repeated old patterns. He looked at his sister. Do you think people can change? Rebecca smiled. I think people change when they stop pretending they don't need to. Across the city, Maya was cleaning her apartment when someone knocked on the door. She wasn't expecting visitors. When she opened it, she found Eleanor, the older woman she had met at the library project. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all." They sat together on the balcony. After a few minutes, Eleanor asked, "How is your heart?" Maya laughed softly. "That's a very direct question. I'm old. We stop wasting time." Maya smiled. "I think he's changing." Eleanor nodded. "And how does that make you feel?" "Happy." She paused. "And terrified." "Why?" "Because if I believe him, and things go back to the way they were." She couldn't finish the sentence. Eleanor reached over and touched her hand. "Trust is like a garden. You cannot demand that flowers grow the day after planting seeds. It takes time. It takes consistency. It takes care." Maya looked toward the sky. "I don't know if I can risk my heart again." "You don't have to decide today." Those words brought unexpected comfort. For months, Maya had felt pressure. Pressure to stay. Pressure to leave. Pressure to forgive. Pressure to move on. Maybe healing didn't require immediate answers. Maybe it simply required honesty. 3 days later, the community center organized a small picnic for the children and volunteers. Maya arrived early. She helped arrange tables and decorations. A few minutes later, Ethan arrived carrying boxes of food. They greeted each other politely. Throughout the afternoon, they worked side by side. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they didn't. Neither forced conversation. Neither avoided it. As the event ended, a sudden summer rain began to fall. Parents rushed to collect their children. Volunteers gathered supplies. One little girl started crying. "My painting!" Her artwork had been left on a table outside. Without hesitation, Ethan ran into the rain. He grabbed the painting before it was ruined. By the time he returned, he was completely soaked. The little girl hugged him tightly. "You saved it." Ethan smiled. "It was important to you." The child nodded. "It was for my mom." Maya stood quietly nearby. Years ago, Ethan would have worried about an expensive suit, about appearances, about schedules. Today, none of those things mattered. He was wet, tired, and smiling. The little girl looked at Maya. "Is he your husband?" The question hung in the air. Maya looked at Ethan, then at the child. Finally, she answered softly, "He was." The little girl frowned. "But you still look at him like you love him." Children had a way of seeing things adults tried to hide. Maya had no answer. Ethan looked away. The rain continued falling around them. Neither realized that the simplest moments often reveal the deepest truths. And for the first time since they separated, both of them were beginning to wonder the same thing. Not whether they still loved each other. They already knew they did. The question was whether two people could build a new future without repeating the mistakes of the past. What do you think? Should Maya continue protecting her heart, or should she slowly allow Ethan back into her life now that he seems to be changing? And what about Ethan's father? After everything that happened, does he deserve a chance to explain himself, or are some wounds too deep to forgive? Share your thoughts in the comments, because every relationship teaches us something different about love, trust, and second chances. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Love Stories by Mr. Johnson, and turn on notifications so you never miss a chapter. In Chapter 6, old fears and hidden insecurities will test Ethan and Maya in ways they never expected. Just when they begin to lower their walls, one misunderstanding could destroy the fragile trust they are slowly rebuilding. The hardest battles are often not against other people, but against the scars we carry inside us. For the next several weeks, Ethan and Maya saw each other more often. Not because they planned to. Life simply kept placing them in the same places. The community center needed volunteers. The children's art program was expanding. Fundraising events had to be organized. Sometimes they worked together for hours. Sometimes they only exchanged a few words. Neither of them talked about the future. Neither mentioned getting back together. That unspoken boundary made everything feel safe. One Saturday morning, Maya arrived early to prepare an art workshop. She unlocked the front door and was surprised to find Ethan already there. He was struggling to hang a large banner across the wall. One side kept falling. She couldn't help smiling. "You know, billionaires usually pay someone to do this." He looked over his shoulder. "I've discovered that I don't know how to do a lot of normal things." She walked over. "Move." He stepped aside. Within seconds, she fixed the banner. He laughed quietly. "I definitely married someone smarter than me." The words slipped out before he realized it. They both became silent. Maya looked at the banner instead of at him. "You married someone patient." He nodded. "I know." The workshop began. Children filled the room with laughter and noise. One little girl was afraid to start painting. "What if I make a mistake?" she asked. Maya knelt beside her. "Do you know what artists do when they make mistakes?" The child shook her head. "They turn them into something new." Ethan listened from across the room. He thought about those words for the rest of the day. Later that afternoon, Maya stayed behind to clean up. She noticed Ethan carrying several heavy boxes toward the storage room. "I can help." "I've got it." She picked up one of the boxes anyway. As they walked together, the lights suddenly went out. The building became dark. Maya stopped. "I think the storm knocked out the power." Ethan placed the boxes down. "It's okay." The emergency light switched on a few seconds later. The hallway glowed with a soft red light. For some reason, neither of them moved. Maya looked at him. "You've changed." Ethan smiled faintly. "I'm trying." "I know." She folded her arms. "I just don't know if trying is enough." He accepted the words without arguing. "I don't know either." She looked surprised. "You always used to have an answer." "I spent years pretending I had answers." The storm outside grew stronger. Rain tapped against the windows. Maya remembered another rainy night. The night she left. She remembered the packed suitcases, the goodbye letter, the silence. Her chest tightened. Without realizing it, she took a small step backward. Ethan noticed. He didn't move closer. That simple decision made her feel strangely relieved. The following week, Ethan met with Dr. Carter again. "I think she's beginning to trust me." The doctor looked at him. "And what do you feel about that?" "I'm afraid." "Why?" "Because, if I lose her again." He couldn't finish the sentence. Dr. Carter nodded. "What are you afraid will happen?" Ethan answered honestly. "I'll end up alone." The older man remained quiet for a moment. "Do you remember what I asked you months ago?" Ethan nodded. "What kind of man do you want to be if Maya never comes back?" "And has your answer changed?" "No." "What is it now?" Ethan looked toward the window. "I want to be someone who stays." The doctor smiled. "Then stay." "What do you mean?" "Stay with difficult conversations. Stay with uncomfortable emotions. Stay when fear tells you to run." People don't heal because they stop being afraid. They heal because they stop letting fear make their decisions. A few days later, Maya received unexpected news. The community center director called her. "We've been offered a full-time position." Maya was surprised. "For me?" "Yes." "The board loved your work with the children." The opportunity was everything she had once wanted. A stable career. A chance to help more families. A fresh start. "There's one condition," the director added. "We're opening a second location in Boston." Maya remained silent. "When would I have to move?" "In about 3 months." After ending the call, she sat quietly in her apartment. Boston. A new city. A new life. A place with no painful memories. No empty penthouse. No unexpected meetings with Ethan. She should have felt excited. Instead, she felt torn. That evening, Vanessa visited. "You should take it." Maya looked at her. "You didn't even let me explain." "I know you." Vanessa smiled. "You've spent your whole life helping other people. This job was made for you." Maya walked to the window. "What if I'm running away?" "Are you?" "I don't know." Vanessa stood beside her. "Are you staying because of Ethan?" Maya didn't answer. That silence was answer enough. The next weekend, another fundraiser brought Ethan and Maya together. They spent the afternoon organizing art displays. As they worked, Ethan noticed she seemed distracted. "Is everything all right?" She hesitated. Then she smiled politely. "Just tired." He nodded. He wanted to ask more. He wanted to know what was bothering her, but he remembered something he had learned. People share when they feel ready. They should never feel forced. The event ended late. As everyone prepared to leave, Ethan found a small sketchbook lying on a table. "Maya." She turned around. "You forgot this." She walked over and reached for it. The sketchbook slipped from her hand. Several pages opened across the floor. Ethan saw quick pencil drawings. Children laughing. City streets. Trees. And one sketch that caught his attention. It was a drawing of him, not the billionaire, not the businessman. Just a simple portrait of him sitting with a child, helping finish a painting. Maya quickly picked up the sketchbook. "I'm sorry." She looked embarrassed. "You don't have to apologize. I wasn't supposed to." She stopped speaking. Ethan smiled gently. "You drew me." She looked away. "I draw things that matter to me." Neither of them noticed Richard Lawson standing near the entrance. He had come to deliver documents to Ethan. From where he stood, it looked as though Ethan and Maya were sharing an intimate moment. Richard quietly walked away. The next morning, business news spread through the company. A large merger opportunity had appeared. It would require Ethan to spend several months traveling across the country. The board was excited. Richard called him immediately. "This is the opportunity we've been waiting for." Ethan looked at the documents. Months ago, he would have accepted without hesitation. Now he wasn't sure. He looked at the sketchbook portrait he had found folded inside his jacket pocket. For the first time in his life, two futures stood before him. The old one, and the new one. He knew he could not have both. What he didn't know was that Maya was sitting alone in her apartment at that exact moment, holding the Boston job offer in her hands. Neither of them had spoken about their plans. Neither knew the other was standing at a crossroads, and unless they found the courage to tell the truth, they might lose each other for reasons that had nothing to do with love. For 3 days, Ethan carried the merger proposal with him. It sat on his desk. It traveled home, in his briefcase. It rested beside his bed at night. The numbers were impossible to ignore. The expansion would make Walker Technologies larger than ever. Investors were calling. Board members were celebrating before the deal was even signed. Months ago, Ethan would have already been on a plane. Now he couldn't stop thinking about one question. Was he making a decision because it was what he wanted, or because it was what he had always done? On Monday morning, Richard Lawson walked into his office. "Have you made a decision?" "Not yet." Richard looked surprised. "You're hesitating." "I know." Richard sat down. "You've spent 20 years building this company." "I have. And now you're thinking about walking away from the biggest opportunity of your career?" Ethan looked out the window. "I spent 20 years walking away from other things too." Richard remained silent. "I used to believe success solved everything." Ethan smiled sadly. "It turns out there are some conversations you can't schedule for later." Across the city, Maya was avoiding a decision of her own. The Boston offer sat on her kitchen table. Every morning she looked at it. Every evening she put it back in the envelope. Vanessa finally grew tired of watching her struggle. "You haven't answered them." "I know. What are you afraid of?" Maya leaned against the counter. "I'm afraid I'll make the wrong choice." Vanessa smiled gently. "There isn't always a perfect choice. There are only choices we have to live with." Maya looked toward the window. "What if Boston is exactly what I need? Then go. And what if I'm leaving because I'm afraid to trust again?" Vanessa crossed the room. "Then you owe yourself the honesty to admit it." Those words stayed with Maya long after her friend left. She walked to her art corner and opened her sketchbook. The last drawing she had made was Ethan sitting beside the little boy at the community center. She touched the page lightly. The truth was simple. She still loved him. The harder truth was even simpler. She was afraid that loving him would cost her herself all over again. That Friday, the community center held a small family day. Children and parents gathered in the garden. Games filled the afternoon. Music played softly. Maya arrived carrying art supplies. She wasn't expecting to see Ethan, but he was already there, helping set up tables. When their eyes met, they smiled politely. Neither mentioned the things weighing on their minds. Throughout the afternoon, they worked together naturally. A little boy named Oliver refused to join the activities. He sat alone beneath a tree. Maya walked over. "What's wrong?" "I don't want to draw." "Why not?" "Because everyone else is better." Before Maya could answer, Ethan sat beside them. "You know," he said, "when I was your age, I was terrible at baseball." Oliver looked at him. "Really? The worst player on the team." "What happened?" "I quit." The little boy frowned. "You gave up?" Ethan nodded. "I thought being bad at something meant I should stop trying." Maya looked at him quietly. Ethan continued. "Now I think I was wrong." Oliver stared at the blank paper in front of him. "What if I mess up?" Maya smiled. "Then you'll have something to learn from." The little boy picked up a crayon. By the end of the afternoon, he had finished an entire picture. As he ran to show his mother, Ethan laughed softly. Maya looked at him. "You're getting better at this." He smiled. "So are you." "At what?" "Letting people help." The words caught her by surprise. She realized he was right. For years, she had carried everything alone. Her fears, her disappointments, her hopes. She had become so used to being the strong one that asking for support felt almost impossible. As the event ended, volunteers began cleaning up. A strong wind scattered papers across the field. Maya chased after them. One sheet landed near the parking lot. She picked it up and stopped. It wasn't one of the children's drawings. It was a business document. At the top of the page she read, "National Expansion Proposal." She saw Ethan's name. Before she could look away, another line caught her attention. "Estimated travel commitment, 8 months." Her heart sank. She folded the paper and walked toward him. "I think this is yours." Ethan looked at the document. His expression changed immediately. "Thank you." She hesitated. "Are you leaving?" He looked at the paper. "I haven't decided." "You always wanted opportunities like this." "I know." She waited. He didn't say anything else. A familiar pain crept into her chest. Years earlier, this was exactly how it had started. Work, silence, distance. She nodded politely. "I should get going." "Maya." But she was already walking away. That night, Maya sat alone in her apartment. The Boston offer remained on the table. She looked at it for a long time. Then she picked up a pen. At that exact moment, Ethan was sitting in his office. He looked at the merger proposal. Then he reached for his own pen. Neither of them signed. Neither of them could, because both of them were waiting for a conversation they were too afraid to have. The following afternoon, Ethan met Dr. Carter. I think I made a mistake. What happened? Maya saw the merger documents. And? I didn't tell her what I was thinking. The doctor nodded. Why? Ethan answered immediately. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? That if I told her, I was considering staying because of her. He looked down. She would feel trapped. Dr. Carter remained quiet. And, what if she thinks you're leaving because work matters more? Ethan closed his eyes. He had not considered that. The older man leaned forward. People cannot respond to conversations that never happen. That same evening, Maya visited Eleanor. The older woman noticed her troubled expression. You've been crying. Maya smiled weakly. I saw something today. She explained the merger proposal. When she finished, Eleanor asked, Did you ask him about it? No. Why not? I was afraid of the answer. Eleanor nodded. Fear has a quiet voice. It tells us to leave before we can be hurt. Maya looked toward the garden. What if nothing has really changed? What if everything has? The question lingered between them. As Maya walked home that night, she looked up at the city lights. She realized something. She had spent years wishing Ethan would open his heart. Now he was trying, but she was beginning to hide behind her own fears. Across the city, Ethan stood on the balcony of the penthouse. His phone rested in his hand. He opened Maya's contact. He started typing. Then he erased the message. He tried again, then erased it once more. Finally, he put the phone away. At that exact moment, Maya did the same thing. 2 people. 2 unsent messages. 2 hearts still carrying old scars. Neither of them knew that the next day would force them to stop hiding, because some moments in life refuse to wait for perfect timing. And when that moment arrived, silence would no longer be an option. The next morning began like any other. Ethan arrived at the office early. Maya opened the community center before the children arrived. Neither of them knew that one phone call was about to change the course of the day. At 10 o'clock, Ethan's phone rang. It was Rebecca. He answered immediately. What's wrong? Her voice was shaking. It's Dad. Ethan remained silent. He collapsed this morning. The words settled heavily in the room. They took him to the hospital. Ethan closed his eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. Rebecca waited. Are you coming? He looked out the window. 26 years of anger rose inside him. The birthdays, the empty promises, the lonely nights, the father who never came home. I don't know. Rebecca spoke softly. You don't have to forgive him today. But one day, you'll have to live with whatever choice you make. The call ended. Ethan sat at his desk staring at nothing. Richard walked into the office carrying documents. Everything all right? My father is in the hospital. Richard placed the papers down. Are you going? I don't know if I should. Richard thought for a moment. When my father died, we hadn't spoken in 3 years. Ethan looked at him. I kept waiting for the right time. He smiled sadly. It never came. Across the city, Maya was helping children prepare for another art class. When her phone vibrated, it was Rebecca. She almost didn't answer. Hello? I know this is a lot to ask. Rebecca's voice was emotional. But Ethan needs someone. Maya stayed quiet. He won't admit it. He probably doesn't even realize it. But today... She stopped to take a breath. Today he's just a little boy whose father might be dying. Maya closed her eyes. Old memories returned. The first time Ethan told her about his childhood. The nights he woke up from bad dreams. The walls he built around himself. She had spent years seeing the wounded child beneath the successful businessman. Where is he? She asked. An hour later, Ethan stood outside the hospital entrance. He had driven there, then stayed in the parking lot. He couldn't make himself go inside. He sat behind the steering wheel remembering the last conversation with his father. Leaving your family is a choice. You should have fought for me. He felt anger, fear, confusion. A soft knock on the car window interrupted his thoughts. He looked up. Maya stood outside. His eyes widened. She opened the passenger door. Rebecca had told her where to find him. Neither spoke for a moment. Finally, Ethan asked, Why are you here? She looked at him. Because nobody should face a day like this alone. His first instinct was to tell her he was fine. He had spent his whole life pretending he was fine. Instead, he whispered, I'm scared. It was the first time Maya had ever heard him admit it. She didn't try to fix anything. She didn't offer advice. She simply sat beside him. After a long silence, Ethan spoke again. What if I go inside and it's too late? Maya answered softly. And what if you don't? The question stayed with him. He looked toward the hospital, then back at her. I don't know what to say to him. You don't have to know. You just have to be honest. They walked into the hospital together. Rebecca met them in the waiting room. She hugged Ethan tightly. The doctors say he's stable. Relief crossed his face. He asked for you. Ethan looked toward the hallway. His feet refused to move. Maya touched his hand gently. You don't have to carry the past by yourself. He nodded. Slowly, he walked toward the room. Daniel Walker looked smaller than Ethan remembered. Age and illness had taken away the image of the strong man from old photographs. The older man smiled weakly when he saw his son. You came. Ethan stood by the door. I almost didn't. Daniel nodded. I wouldn't have blamed you. Silence filled the room. Finally, Ethan spoke. I spent years hating you. I know. I told myself I didn't need you. I know. His voice shook. But I did. The old man's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry. Ethan looked away. I don't know if I can forgive you. Daniel closed his eyes. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking you not to spend your life carrying what I gave you. Those words hit Ethan harder than he expected. He realized that his father wasn't only talking about the past. He was talking about fear, distance, silence, the very things that had nearly destroyed his marriage. Outside the room, Maya waited quietly. Rebecca sat beside her. Thank you for coming. Maya smiled faintly. I almost didn't. Rebecca looked down the hallway. My brother has always been good at pretending. She laughed softly. When we were children, he used to tell me he wasn't afraid of thunderstorms. He was terrified. How did you know? He would sit outside my bedroom door until he fell asleep. Maya listened carefully. She realized there were still parts of Ethan's life she had never known. Rebecca looked at her. He loved you. I know. He was just afraid that if he needed you too much. She finished the sentence herself. I would leave. Rebecca nodded. Several hours later, Ethan walked out of the hospital room. His eyes were red. Maya stood. How is he? I don't know. He smiled sadly. But I think I understand him a little better. They walked outside together. The evening air was cool. Ethan looked at her. I spent years blaming my father for teaching me that people leave. She listened quietly. But the truth is... He paused. I kept teaching myself the same lesson over and over again. Maya looked at him. For the first time, she saw no walls, no mask, no businessman hiding behind confidence. Just a man trying to understand his own heart. She wanted to say something. She wanted to tell him she still cared. Instead, she simply asked, Have you eaten today? He laughed quietly. No. She smiled. Some things never change. They walked toward a small diner across the street. For the first time, in a very long time, they sat together without pretending to be strangers. Neither of them realized that a single conversation could change a life. And before the night was over, one quiet confession would force both of them to face the future they had been avoiding. The diner across from the hospital was almost empty. A waitress greeted them with a warm smile and led them to a small booth near the window. Rain had started falling again. Soft music played in the background. For a few minutes, neither Ethan nor Maya spoke. The waitress poured coffee. Can I get you two anything to eat? Maya looked at Ethan. You haven't eaten all day. He smiled faintly. I know. She ordered for both of them. It was such a small thing, but it reminded Ethan of the life they used to share. The quiet routines, the ordinary moments, the things he had once believed would always be there. When the waitress walked away, Maya looked out the window. How is your father? Ethan took a deep breath. I think he's lonely. She turned back to him. I think he's been lonely for a very long time. He paused. And I think I understand that feeling more than I ever wanted to. Maya listened. She noticed something different. He wasn't trying to sound strong. He wasn't hiding behind confidence. He was simply telling the truth. Ethan wrapped his hands around the coffee cup. When I was a little boy, I used to sit by the front window every Friday. She looked at him quietly. My father promised he would visit. He smiled sadly. He never came. Maya felt her heart tighten. I told myself that, if I stopped expecting people to stay, they couldn't disappoint me. The food arrived. Neither of them touched it. Ethan looked down at the table. I thought I was protecting myself. He finally looked at her. I didn't realize I was asking you to pay the price for my fears. Maya lowered her eyes. For years, she had imagined hearing those words. Now that they had finally arrived, they didn't erase the pain, but they mattered. They mattered because they were honest. She took a slow breath. I need to tell you something too. He waited. When I was a little girl, I used to wait for my father the same way. Ethan looked surprised. He made promises. He broke them. And after a while, I started believing that if someone left, it was because I wasn't enough. She looked out at the rain. When you stopped making time for me, I told myself the same story. Ethan's voice was almost a whisper. You were always enough. Tears filled her eyes. I know that now. The answer surprised him. She continued. But back then, I didn't. They sat in silence. Not the painful silence that had once lived between them. A different kind. The kind that exists when two people finally stop hiding. When they finished eating, they walked outside. The rain had stopped. The streets glistened under the city lights. Neither seemed ready to say goodbye. They walked without choosing a direction. After a few blocks, they reached a small park. The benches were still wet. Maya laughed softly. You remember this place? Ethan looked around. It took him a moment. Then he smiled. Our second date. You spilled coffee on yourself. You laughed at me. You looked ridiculous. He laughed too. For the record, I was trying to impress you. I know. She looked toward the empty playground. You didn't have to. The words settled gently between them. Ethan sat on a bench. Maya sat beside him. I almost took a job in Boston, she admitted. His heart skipped. Almost? I haven't decided. He nodded slowly. A few seconds passed. Then he spoke. I was offered a merger that would take me away for months. She looked at him. I haven't accepted it either. They both smiled quietly. It felt strange. For so long, they had made decisions without truly talking to each other. Now, they were finally sharing the things that mattered. Maya looked at the ground. I was afraid that if I told you about Boston, you would ask me to stay. He answered honestly. I was afraid that if I told you about the merger, you would think I hadn't changed. She looked at him. Maybe we've both been letting fear make decisions. He nodded. Maybe. At that moment, Ethan's phone rang. It was the hospital. He answered immediately. The nurse spoke softly. Your father is asking for you. I'll be there soon. The call ended. Maya stood. You should go. He looked at her. Will you come with me? The question was simple. Months ago she would have said yes without thinking. Then she would have ignored her own feelings to take care of his. Now she paused. Not because she didn't care. Because she was learning to make choices instead of sacrifices. Finally she smiled. I'll walk with you to the hospital. It wasn't a rejection. It wasn't a promise. It was a boundary. And Ethan understood. As they walked, he realized something. Love was not about asking someone to carry your pain. It was about respecting the limits they needed to feel safe. They reached the hospital entrance. Maya stopped. I'll wait here. Ethan nodded. Thank you. He turned toward the doors. Then he stopped. Maya. She looked at him. I don't know what our future looks like. Neither do I. But I'm grateful you came today. She smiled softly. So am I. Ethan walked inside. Maya watched him disappear down the hallway. For the first time since they separated, she wasn't thinking about the past. She was thinking about the future. Not the future they once planned. A different one. One where two imperfect people were learning how to be honest. Daniel was awake when Ethan entered the room. The older man smiled weakly. You came back. Ethan pulled a chair closer. I wanted to ask you something. Daniel nodded. When things went wrong, why didn't you fight harder? The old man closed his eyes. Because I was ashamed. I thought the people I loved would be better without me. Ethan felt a chill run through him. He had said almost the same thing to Dr. Carter months earlier. He had believed Maya deserved someone better. So, instead of letting her see his fears, he hid behind work. Daniel looked at his son. Don't make my mistake. Don't let shame convince you that leaving is kindness. Those words stayed with Ethan as he left the hospital room. Outside, he found Maya sitting quietly in the waiting area. She had decided not to leave. He smiled when he saw her. She stood. Everything okay? He nodded. Then he looked at her for a long moment. There was a time when I thought strength meant never needing anyone. She listened. I don't believe that anymore. Neither moved. The hospital around them was busy. Doctors walked past. Families talked quietly. Life continued. Yet for a brief moment, the world seemed still. Maya felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Small, fragile, but real. What neither of them knew was that life was about to place one final test before them. A choice that would reveal whether they had truly changed, or whether old fears were still stronger than love. The weeks after Daniel Walker's illness passed quietly. There were no dramatic declarations, no promises to start over, no conversations about getting back together. Ethan and Maya simply continued living their lives. Sometimes those lives crossed paths. Sometimes they didn't. And strangely, that was exactly what allowed trust to grow. Ethan kept attending therapy. He visited his father at the hospital, and later at the small apartment where Daniel was recovering. The visits were awkward. Some days they talked. Some days they sat in silence. Neither tried to erase the past. They were simply learning how to exist in the present. One afternoon, Daniel looked at his son and smiled. "You don't have to visit me every week." Ethan adjusted the blanket on the old man's chair. "I know. Then why do you?" Ethan thought about the answer. "Because I spent too much of my life believing that showing up didn't matter." Daniel lowered his eyes. "It matters." Across the city, Maya accepted more responsibilities at the community center. The Boston offer was still waiting. She had asked for more time. The director understood, but she knew she couldn't delay forever. One afternoon, she was organizing supplies when the little girl from the art class ran up to her. "Miss Maya!" "What is it?" The child held out a drawing. It showed a large tree with many branches. "What do you think?" Maya smiled. "It's beautiful." The little girl pointed to one broken branch. "That part got damaged in the storm." "Why didn't you erase it?" The child looked confused. "Because it's still part of the tree." Maya stared at the picture. Somehow, children always found simple ways to explain complicated things. A few days later, the community center held a neighborhood clean-to-up project. Families, volunteers, and local businesses all participated. Ethan arrived carrying gardening tools. Several children ran toward him. "Mr. Ethan! Can you help us plant flowers?" He smiled. "I'll do my best." Maya watched from a distance. Vanessa walked over and folded her arms. "You still love him." Maya sighed. "I know. And love isn't the problem." Vanessa looked toward Ethan. "He seems different." "He is. So what's stopping you?" Maya looked down. "I'm waiting to see if the change lasts." Vanessa nodded. "That's fair." The children spent the afternoon planting flowers around the playground. One little boy dug a hole that was far too deep. He frowned. "I ruined it." Ethan knelt beside him. "No, you didn't. It's too big. We'll fix it together." The little boy smiled. Maya watched the scene quietly. She remembered another version of Ethan. The man who would have answered emails during events like this. The man who was physically present but emotionally somewhere else. The person kneeling in the dirt beside that child was not pretending. She could see that the harder question was whether she could trust it. Later that afternoon, the director approached Maya. "I have some news." She smiled. "What is it?" "The Boston office needs an answer by the end of the month." Maya nodded slowly. "I understand. You deserve this opportunity." After the director walked away, Maya stood alone in the garden. She looked at the children playing. She looked at the flowers they had planted. Then she looked at Ethan. He was helping a little girl tie her shoe. She remembered all the nights she had cried because he wasn't there. She also remembered the man who had spent the last several months quietly showing up. No speeches, no pressure, just consistency. She wasn't sure what to do. As the event ended, volunteers packed their equipment. Ethan carried several empty boxes toward a storage shed. Maya followed. "I need to tell you something." He placed the boxes down. "What is it?" "I was offered a position in Boston." He stayed quiet. She continued. "I haven't accepted it." He nodded. "That's a wonderful opportunity." She looked surprised. "You're not going to ask me to stay?" He smiled gently. "No." She waited. He took a slow breath. "I love you." Her heart raced. "But I don't want fear to decide your future. If Boston is where your life takes you." He looked at the ground. "Then I'll be happy that you're doing something you love." She stared at him. Months ago, he would have fought to control the situation. He would have made promises. He would have tried to convince her. Now he was giving her the freedom she had always needed. She felt tears in her eyes. "You're making this very difficult." A small smile crossed his face. "I know." She laughed softly through her tears. It was the first time they had laughed together, without sadness hiding underneath. That evening, Ethan met Dr. Carter. "I told her I love her." The doctor smiled. "And?" "I told her not to stay for me." Dr. Carter nodded. "How do you feel?" "Terrified." "Why?" "Because she might leave." The older man leaned back. "And if she does?" Ethan looked out the window. "I'll be heartbroken." He paused. "But I won't stop becoming the person I want to be." For the first time since their sessions began, Dr. Carter smiled without asking another question. Meanwhile, Maya sat on her balcony holding the Boston documents. She thought about Ethan's words. She thought about the man he had become. Then she thought about herself. She realized something. She was no longer the woman who would stay in a relationship out of hope alone. She had rebuilt her life. She had found her own strength. If she chose Ethan again, it would not be because she needed him. It would be because she wanted to share a life with him. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Eleanor. "How is your heart today?" Maya smiled and typed back, "It's still healing." A few seconds later, the reply came. "The strongest hearts are not the ones that never break. They are the ones that keep beating after they do." Maya looked toward the city lights. Somewhere out there, Ethan was learning to live without hiding. She was learning to live without fear. Neither of them knew that the final decision was getting closer. And before the month ended, one unexpected event would force them both to discover whether love was truly ready for a second chance. The end of the month arrived faster than either of them expected. Maya still hadn't answered the Boston office. The envelope remained on her kitchen table. Every morning she looked at it. Every night she told herself she would decide tomorrow. Tomorrow kept moving. One afternoon, Vanessa stopped by her apartment carrying coffee. "You still haven't made a decision." Maya smiled. "Is it that obvious?" Vanessa looked at the unopened envelope. "I think that envelope knows you better than I do." They both laughed. Then, Vanessa became serious. "What do you really want?" Maya walked toward the balcony. "I want a life where I don't have to wonder if someone will be there for me." "And do you think Ethan can give you that?" She stayed quiet. Vanessa waited. Finally, Maya answered, "I think he wants to." "Is that enough?" "I don't know." Across the city, Ethan was having a conversation of his own. Richard Lawson sat across from him in the boardroom. "The investors need an answer." Ethan looked at the merger documents. "I know." Richard folded his hands. "A year ago, you wouldn't have hesitated." "No." "What changed?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I realized that building a successful company and building a meaningful life are not always the same thing." Richard nodded. "So what are you going to do?" Ethan looked through the window overlooking Manhattan. For years that view had reminded him of ambition. Today, it reminded him of all the evenings he had spent working while someone waited for him at home. "I'm going to choose the life I can be proud of." That weekend, the community center organized its annual family fair. It was the biggest event of the year. Children displayed their artwork. Families shared meals. Local musicians played throughout the afternoon. Maya arrived early to help prepare. She noticed something unusual. The playground garden looked different. The flowers planted weeks earlier had started to bloom. The little girl who helped plant them ran over. "Miss Maya!" "They grew." Maya knelt beside her. "They did." The child smiled proudly. "My grandma says flowers need sunshine and time." She pointed at the garden. "You can't hurry them." Maya looked at the colorful flowers. Some things really did take time. Maybe trust worked the same way. A few minutes later, Ethan arrived. He was carrying several boxes of art supplies. One of the children waved excitedly. "Mr. Ethan." He walked over. "Good morning." The little girl looked from Ethan to Maya. Then she smiled. "You two don't look sad anymore." Both of them laughed. Children noticed everything. During the fair, Maya helped children paint a large community mural. Everyone added something. Trees, birds, houses, families. At the center of the mural was a bridge crossing a river. Maya smiled when she saw it. The little boy who had painted the first bridge months earlier stood beside her. "I made another one." "I can see that." "This time, the people are walking across." She looked carefully. On the bridge stood two small figures. "They aren't alone anymore," the boy said. Maya felt her eyes fill with tears. "No, they aren't." Later that afternoon, Ethan found Maya arranging paintings inside the gallery room. "I heard the flowers bloomed." She smiled. "They did." They stood quietly for a moment. Then Ethan reached into his jacket pocket. "I have something for you." She looked surprised. It wasn't a piece of jewelry. It wasn't an expensive gift. It was a folded sheet of paper. She opened it. It was the merger proposal. Across the front, Ethan had written one sentence. "I declined the offer because I no longer want success to cost me the people I love." She looked up at him. "You didn't have to do that." "I know. What if you regret it?" He smiled. "Then I'll live with my decision." She lowered the paper. "I haven't accepted Boston." He looked at her but said nothing. She continued. "I didn't know whether I was choosing a future or running from my past." The room became quiet. Neither tried to fill the silence. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I don't want you to make a decision because of me. I know, and I'm not asking you to come back." "I know." She smiled softly. "I know a lot of things now that I didn't know before." At that moment, a loud crash came from outside. Everyone ran toward the playground. A strong gust of wind had knocked over part of the decoration stand. Several paintings had fallen into the grass. Children rushed to save their artwork. One little girl started crying. My picture. It had been torn down the middle. She held it up sadly. It's broken. Maya knelt beside her. Before she could speak, Ethan sat down too. The little girl looked at them. Can you fix it? Ethan looked at Maya. She nodded. Together, they carefully placed the torn pieces back together. The picture wasn't perfect anymore. A thin line remained where it had been ripped. The little girl frowned. It doesn't look the same. Maya smiled. No. Ethan looked at the child. But it's still beautiful. The little girl stared at the repaired painting. Then she smiled. I think I like it better. She hugged both of them before running back to her friends. Maya and Ethan looked at the picture still resting in their hands. Neither needed to explain what they were thinking. Some things break. Some things heal. And some things become stronger because they were repaired with care. As the sun began to set, families slowly left the fair. The playground became quiet. Maya and Ethan walked toward the garden. The flowers moved gently in the evening breeze. She looked at him. I need to make a decision. He nodded. I know. She took a deep breath. So do you. He looked confused. She smiled softly. You've spent months proving that you can show up. You've faced your past. You've changed your life. But there's one question you still haven't answered. He waited. What kind of future do you actually want? He looked at the garden, then at the children laughing in the distance, then back at Maya. For the first time in my life. He smiled. I want a future that has room for people. Maya felt tears fill her eyes. She didn't answer, not because she didn't know what she felt, but because she had learned that important decisions should never be rushed. As they stood together, Rebecca watched from across the playground. She smiled quietly. Her brother looked different, not because he had become successful. He had always been successful. He finally looked at peace. Neither Ethan nor Maya realized that one final decision still waited for them. Maya would have to answer Boston, and Ethan would have to decide whether he was ready to ask for something he had once taken for granted. Not forgiveness, not another chance. A future built slowly, honestly, and one day at a time. The first Monday of the new month arrived quietly. There were no emergencies, no dramatic surprises, just two people carrying decisions that would shape the rest of their lives. Maya sat at her kitchen table with the Boston contract in front of her. She read it one last time. The position offered everything she had worked for. A larger program, more children to help, a chance to build something meaningful. She picked up a pen, then she placed it back down. Her phone rang. It was the director of the community center. Good morning, Maya. Good morning. I wanted to check in. I know, the older woman laughed softly. I've been doing this job for 20 years. I can always tell when someone is trying to choose between two good things. Maya looked out the window. What if I make the wrong choice? There may not be a wrong choice. There may only be the life you are willing to build. After the call ended, Maya sat quietly. For so long she had believed happiness would come from finding the perfect answer. Now she wondered if happiness came from accepting that no life was ever perfect. Across the city, Ethan stood in the conference room at Walker Technologies. The board members waited for him. Richard sat beside him. Are you ready? Ethan nodded. He stood and looked around the room. Many of these people had worked with him for years. They expected the old Ethan. The man who never slowed down. The man who believed work always came first. I've made a decision, he said. The room became silent. I will remain as CEO. Several board members smiled, but there will be changes. The smiles disappeared. I will no longer work 7 days a week. I will no longer cancel my personal commitments for meetings that can wait. I will be delegating more responsibilities. One investor frowned. That could affect growth. Ethan smiled politely. Perhaps. But endless growth means very little if it costs you the life you're trying to build. The room stayed quiet. Richard looked at him and smiled. For the first time, Ethan wasn't leading with fear. He was leading with clarity. That afternoon, Maya visited Eleanor. The older woman was working in her garden. Flowers covered almost every corner of the yard. Maya smiled. You always seem to be planting something. Eleanor laughed. My husband used to say that gardens teach patience. They walked slowly between the flower beds. I still haven't decided about Boston, Maya admitted. Eleanor nodded. Can I ask you a question? Of course. If Ethan disappeared from your life tomorrow, would Boston still be the dream? Maya stopped walking. She had never asked herself that. She thought about the children, the art programs, the opportunity to help people. Then she thought about her apartment, her friends, her mother, the community she had rebuilt. Finally she answered, no. Eleanor smiled gently. Then perhaps Boston was never your future. Perhaps it was your escape. Maya looked down at the flowers. For months, she had told herself she was choosing between a career and love. Maybe the real choice was between fear and peace. The next Saturday, the community center organized a picnic for volunteers. Children played games across the park. Parents prepared food. Music drifted through the air. Maya arrived carrying baskets of supplies. Ethan was already there helping set up tables. They greeted each other with an easy smile. The tension that once lived between them had softened, not disappeared, but softened. A little boy ran over holding a kite. "Mr. Ethan! Can you help me?" The string had become tangled. Ethan knelt beside him. "I'll try." After several minutes, he laughed. "I think I made it worse." Maya walked over. "Let me see." The little boy smiled. "Miss Maya always fixes things." She carefully untangled the string. The child looked at both of them. "You make a good team." Neither answered. The little boy ran away with his kite. Maya looked at Ethan. "You know, he might be right." He smiled. "We always did." As the afternoon continued, they found themselves walking beside the lake near the park. Families sat on the grass. Children fed ducks. The world felt peaceful. "I made a decision," Maya said. Ethan looked at her. She took a slow breath. "I'm staying in New York." He didn't speak. She smiled. "But not because of you." He nodded. "I know. I'm staying because I finally realized that I don't need to run from my past." He looked at the water. "I'm proud of you." She laughed softly. "You don't even know what my decision is." "I know enough." She looked at him carefully. "You've changed." He smiled. "So have you." They reached an old wooden bench, the same kind of simple place they once ignored because they were always in a hurry. Now neither seemed eager to leave. Ethan looked toward the lake. "I also made a decision." She waited. "I've been thinking about everything that happened. The mistakes. The loneliness. The person I used to be." He turned to face her. "I don't want us to go back." Maya felt her heart sink. Then he continued. "I want us to move forward." She looked at him quietly. "I don't want the marriage we had. I want something healthier. Something honest. Something where we both feel safe enough to tell the truth." Tears filled her eyes. For so long she had wanted him to understand. Now, he finally did. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small object. It was the old ceramic coffee mug she had made years ago. She smiled. "I found this while packing." Ethan laughed. "I thought it was gone." "So did I." She handed it to him. "It's still ugly." He looked at the uneven shape. "No." He smiled. "It's imperfect. And somehow that makes it better." They both laughed. The sound felt unfamiliar. Not because it had disappeared, because life had finally made room for it again. As evening approached, the picnic ended. People slowly packed their things. Rebecca watched from a distance. Vanessa stood beside her. "They look different," Vanessa said. Rebecca smiled. They stopped trying to be perfect. The two women looked at Ethan and Maya. Neither was holding the other's hand. Neither was making promises. They were simply walking side by side. And sometimes, that was enough. As they reached the parking lot, Ethan stopped. "There is something I want to ask you." Maya looked at him. He smiled nervously. A side of him she had almost forgotten. The confident billionaire was nowhere to be found. Only the honest man remained. Before he could speak, his phone rang. It was the hospital. Rebecca looked at the screen and frowned. "It's Dad." Ethan answered. A nurse spoke quietly. Daniel Walker had taken a turn for the worse. Ethan lowered the phone slowly. Maya looked at him. Without saying a word, she stepped closer. He looked at her. The question he wanted to ask remained unfinished, because life, once again, had reminded them that some moments cannot wait. And before the night was over, Ethan would have to make peace with the past if he ever hoped to build a future. The drive to the hospital was quiet. Ethan kept his eyes on the road. Maya sat beside him. Neither of them spoke. There were moments in life when words only made heavy things heavier. When they arrived, Rebecca was waiting in the lobby. She walked over quickly. "The doctors are with him now." Ethan nodded. "Can I see him?" They said yes. He looked at Maya. "You don't have to stay." She gave him a small smile. "I know." It was the same answer she had given months earlier. Not because she felt responsible for carrying his pain, because she wanted to be there. Ethan walked down the hallway alone. The hospital room was quiet. Daniel was awake. He looked tired, but he smiled when he saw his son. "You came." Ethan pulled a chair closer. "I said I would." The older man looked out the window. "I wasn't sure." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Daniel laughed softly. "You know, I spent years planning what I would say if I ever saw you again." Ethan looked at him. "And now?" "I forgot all of it." A small smile appeared on Ethan's face. Daniel noticed. You have your mother's smile. The words caught him off guard. He had spent so much of his life avoiding memories that he almost forgot them. What was she like? Ethan asked quietly. Daniel looked surprised. You really want to know? He nodded. The old man smiled sadly. She was stubborn. Ethan laughed. I know that part. And kind. And brave. She loved you more than anything. Daniel lowered his eyes. We made mistakes. Both of us. But one thing was always true. You were loved. Ethan felt tears gathering in his eyes. He had spent years believing he had been abandoned. Now he realized something different. The adults around him had been broken too. That didn't erase the pain, but it helped him understand it. Daniel looked at his son. I need to ask you something. Ethan waited. When you think about me. The old man's voice shook. Do you only remember the day I left? Ethan was silent. He thought about the answer. He remembered learning to ride a bicycle. He remembered sitting on his father's shoulders during a parade. He remembered bedtime stories. There had been good memories. He had buried them because the ending hurt too much. Finally, he answered, No. Daniel closed his eyes. Thank you. Outside the room, Maya sat beside Rebecca. The two women watched people moving through the hallway. Rebecca smiled gently. I owe you an apology. Maya looked confused. For what? There were times I blamed you. Maya frowned. Why? Because after you left, my brother finally started facing himself. She laughed softly. I was angry that it took losing you for him to change. Maya looked toward Daniel's room. I was angry too. Rebecca nodded. But now I understand something. What? People grow when they are ready. And sometimes the people who love them get hurt in the process. Maya looked down. I still don't know what the future looks like. You don't have to. Rebecca smiled. You just have to know what you deserve. An hour later, Ethan walked out of the hospital room. His eyes were red, but his face seemed lighter. Maya stood. How is he? He'll be okay. She smiled with relief. They walked outside together. The evening air was cool. Cars moved slowly through the streets. Ethan stopped near the hospital garden. I've been thinking about something. She waited. My whole life, I wanted someone to apologize for the pain I carried. Maya looked at him. Did he? Yes. He smiled faintly. But that's not what changed me. What did? I realized I was waiting for the past to give me permission to live. She felt those words deeply, because she had done the same thing. She had waited for old hurts to disappear before allowing herself to be happy. They sat on a bench beneath a large tree. I have something to tell you, Maya said. He looked at her. I turned down Boston. He smiled. I know you said it wasn't because of me. It wasn't. She laughed softly. But it also wasn't because I was afraid. He nodded. I believe you. She looked at him carefully. A few months ago I would have needed you to explain everything. I would have needed promises. I would have needed certainty. She looked toward the sky. I don't anymore. He understood. Healing had changed both of them. A nurse stepped outside and waved to Ethan. Your father wants to see you again. Ethan stood. Then he looked at Maya. There was something I wanted to ask you at the picnic. She smiled. I know. You do? You look terrified. He laughed. I was. She stood beside him. You don't have to ask it today. He looked confused. Why not? Because we're not the same people we were. She took a slow breath. And I don't want either of us making decisions because we're afraid of losing the other. He nodded slowly. She was right. For the first time in his life, he wasn't trying to hold on to someone out of fear. He was learning to let love grow at its own pace. Several days passed. Daniel recovered enough to return home. Ethan visited often. Sometimes they talked about the past. Sometimes they talked about baseball. Sometimes they simply drank coffee together. The relationship wasn't perfect. Neither of them expected it to be. One Sunday afternoon, Daniel looked at his son. There's something different about you. Ethan smiled. What? You stopped carrying the world on your shoulders. He laughed quietly. No. I just stopped pretending I could carry it alone. That same afternoon, Maya finished a new painting. It showed a bridge crossing a river. The two people who had once stood on opposite sides were now meeting in the middle. She looked at the finished work for a long time. Then she wrote a title beneath it. Some journeys take longer than others. Vanessa walked into the room. She looked at the painting and smiled. So what? Are you happy? Maya thought carefully. She remembered the lonely nights, the tears, the uncertainty. Then she remembered the quiet conversations, the community center, the hospital, the ordinary moments that had slowly rebuilt trust. Finally, she answered, I'm becoming happy. A few days later, Ethan received a message from Maya. Would you like to have coffee this Saturday? He looked at the screen for a long moment. No emergency, no crisis, no hospital, no fundraiser. Just coffee. Something ordinary. Something simple. He smiled and typed back, I'd like that very much. Neither of them realized that the small invitation meant more than any grand romantic gesture ever could. Because the strongest relationships are not built on dramatic moments. They are built on ordinary days shared with extraordinary care. And on Saturday morning, two people who had once broken each other's hearts would sit across from one another and quietly discover whether a new beginning was finally possible. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and a gentle breeze. For the first time in a very long time, Ethan Walker was nervous. Not because he was speaking to investors. Not because he was negotiating a business deal. He was nervous because he was going to have coffee with the woman he had once promised to love for the rest of his life. He stood in front of his closet longer than he wanted to admit. Then he laughed at himself. Months earlier, he would have chosen the most expensive suit he owned. Today, he reached for a simple blue sweater and a pair of jeans. When he arrived at the cafe, Maya was already there. She sat near the window with a cup of coffee and a sketchbook. She looked up and smiled. You're early. So are you. I didn't want to be late. Neither did I. They laughed softly. The awkwardness that once existed between them was almost gone. Not because they had forgotten the past, because they had stopped pretending it never happened. The waitress came over. What can I get for you? Ethan looked at Maya. What are you having? She smiled. The usual? He looked at the waitress. I'll have the same. The waitress walked away. Maya raised an eyebrow. You don't even know what I ordered. I know, but I'm learning to trust your judgment. She laughed. You've definitely changed. I hope so. They spent the next hour talking. Not about their separation. Not about old arguments. They talked about the children at the community center. Rebecca's family. Daniel's recovery. Books. Movies. The little moments they had once rushed past. At one point, Maya opened her sketchbook. She turned it toward him. Inside was a drawing of the community garden. Children were planting flowers. Parents were laughing. In one corner stood a man holding a watering can. Ethan smiled. You drew me again. I did. Am I finally getting better? She looked at the picture. You're getting happier. He didn't realize how much those words meant until she said them. After leaving the cafe, they walked through Central Park. Families pushed strollers along the paths. Musicians played near the fountains. The city seemed less hurried than usual. They reached a small bridge overlooking the lake. Maya stopped walking. You know what's strange? What? I used to think that if we ever got another chance. She smiled. Everything would go back to the way it was. Ethan leaned against the railing. I don't want that. She looked at him. Neither do I. The wind moved gently across the water. He turned toward her. I spent a long time thinking about what love meant. And? I thought it meant never making mistakes. She shook her head. Nobody can do that. I know, he smiled. I think love means being willing to grow after you make them. Maya looked out at the lake. I think love also means feeling safe enough to tell the truth. He nodded, even when the truth is difficult. She took a deep breath. There are still days when I remember how lonely I felt. I know. There are still days when I wonder if things could go back to that. I know. He didn't defend himself. He didn't promise that life would always be perfect. Instead, he answered honestly, if that fear ever returns. He looked directly at her. I want you to tell me. I will. And I promise, I'll listen. Later that afternoon, they visited the community center. The children were preparing a small art display. The little boy who always painted bridges ran toward them. I finished my new picture. He held it up proudly. A bridge stretched across a river. A family stood in the middle. Above them was a bright sunrise. Maya smiled. It's beautiful. The little boy looked at Ethan. Do you know why I painted the sunrise? Ethan shook his head. Because every day gets another chance to begin. The adults looked at each other. Sometimes, wisdom arrived in the smallest voices. As evening approached, Maya and Ethan helped clean the art room. When the last child had gone home, they stood quietly among the paintings. Maya walked to a shelf and picked up the old ceramic coffee mug. You left this here weeks ago. Ethan smiled. I was wondering where it went. She held it carefully. It still has a crack. He nodded. I know. It could break again. I know. She looked at him. But it's still useful. A gentle smile crossed his face. So are we. She laughed. Then, for the first time since they separated, she reached for his hand. He didn't pull her close. He didn't make promises. He simply held her hand. It felt different, stronger. Not because the pain was gone, because they had both learned how to carry it honestly. That evening, Ethan drove Maya home. When they reached her apartment building, neither rushed to say goodbye. Maya looked at him. "I need you to understand something." "I will try." She smiled. "I can't pretend the past never happened. I'm not asking you to. I may need time. I know. I may have difficult days." He nodded. "So will I." She laughed softly. "That's probably true." For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Ethan spoke. "I don't want to rush you. I don't want to rush us. I just want the chance to build something better." Maya felt tears in her eyes. Not tears of sadness. Not tears of fear. The quiet tears that come when hope returns after a very long absence. She squeezed his hand gently. "Then let's build it slowly." He smiled. "I'd like that." She walked toward her apartment. Halfway to the door she turned around. "Ethan." "Yes?" "Don't work late tonight." He laughed. "I wasn't planning to." "What are you planning?" He looked up at the evening sky. "I'm having dinner with my father." She smiled. "Good." As she disappeared inside, Ethan remained standing on the sidewalk. Months ago, he believed that losing Maya was the end of his story. Now he understood something different. Sometimes life breaks your heart so that you finally learn how to use it. He looked at the old coffee mug still resting in his hands. It was cracked, uneven, far from perfect, and, somehow, it had never looked more beautiful. He smiled and walked toward his car, unaware that one final conversation was waiting to complete the journey they had both fought so hard to make. 6 months later, autumn returned to New York. The leaves changed color. The mornings became cooler. The flowers the children had planted in the community garden had grown strong. Life had continued moving forward. And so had Ethan and Maya. They did not rush back into their old marriage. They spent time together. They spent time apart. They had dinners, long walks, quiet conversations. Some days were easy. Some days, old fears returned. When they did, they talked. Sometimes the conversations were uncomfortable. Sometimes, they ended with silence. But it was no longer the kind of silence that pushed them apart. It was the kind that gave each of them space to think. One Saturday morning, Ethan arrived at the community center carrying a box of art supplies. The children ran toward him. "Mr. Ethan." "You came." He smiled. "I said I would." The little girl who once worried about making mistakes held up a painting. "Look." The picture showed a garden full of flowers. One flower was bent to one side. "I messed up," she said. Ethan looked at the painting. "No." She frowned. "It isn't straight." He smiled. "Neither is life." The little girl thought about it. Then she smiled too. "Maybe that's okay." "I think it is." Across the room, Maya watched the conversation. She smiled quietly. The old Ethan would have searched for the perfect answer. The new Ethan simply told the truth. Later that afternoon, Maya and Ethan walked through the community garden. The flowers were blooming. Children laughed nearby. Maya looked around. "Do you remember the first day we planted these?" "I do. You didn't know the difference between a flower and a weed." He laughed. "I still don't." She smiled. "But you kept showing up." They stopped walking. Maya looked at him. "I have something for you." She handed him a small wrapped package. He opened it carefully. Inside was a framed painting. It was the bridge, the same bridge that had appeared throughout the story, but it was different now. The two people were no longer standing in the middle. They had crossed to the other side. Above the painting was a single sentence. "The bravest people are not the ones who never fall apart. They are the ones who choose to grow after they do." Ethan looked at the painting for a long time. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." He looked at her. "Yes, I do." He took a slow breath. "I spent years believing that success was the greatest thing I would ever achieve." He smiled sadly. "I was wrong." She listened quietly. "I thought money would protect me. It didn't. I thought distance would keep me safe. It didn't. I thought I had all the time in the world to become a better husband." He lowered his eyes. "I was wrong about that too." He looked at her again. "Losing you forced me to face the parts of myself I spent a lifetime hiding." He smiled softly. "And finding my way back to myself helped me find my way back to you." Tears filled Maya's eyes. She remembered the lonely dinners, the empty apartment, the goodbye letter. She also remembered the hospital, the community center, the ordinary moments that slowly rebuilt trust. She realized something. They had not erased the past. They had learned from it. That evening, friends and family gathered at the community center for a small celebration. The children's new art building was finally complete. Parents, volunteers, and donors filled the hall. Rebecca stood beside Daniel. The older man had recovered well. He looked around the room and smiled. "You built something beautiful." Ethan shook his head. We all did. Daniel looked at his son. I'm proud of you. Years ago, Ethan had dreamed of hearing those words. Now he simply smiled. Thank you. He no longer needed the past to be different. He was finally at peace with it. Across the room, Vanessa hugged Maya. You look happy. Maya laughed softly. I am. Are you afraid? She thought about the question. Sometimes. And? I don't think courage means never being afraid. I think it means not letting fear choose your life. Vanessa smiled. I think you've learned a lot. Maya looked toward Ethan. We both have. As the celebration came to an end, the children gathered everyone outside. The little boy who loved painting bridges stood in front of the crowd. I made one last picture. He held it up proudly. The painting showed a large tree. Its branches were not perfect. Some were bent, some had old scars, but the tree was full of leaves, full of life. What does it mean? Ethan asked. The little boy smiled. My grandpa says trees keep growing even after storms. Everyone became quiet. Maya looked at Ethan. He reached for her hand. This time, she held it without hesitation, not because she believed life would never hurt them again, because they had both learned how to face difficult days together. They stood there watching the children laugh and play. No expensive parties, no grand speeches, just ordinary happiness, the kind they had both spent years searching for. Ethan looked at Maya. There was a time when I thought becoming a billionaire was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. She smiled. And now? He looked around at the community they had built, at his sister, at his father, at the children, then back at the woman beside him. Now I know that the best thing that ever happened to me was meeting the woman who refused to let me hide from myself. Maya laughed through happy tears. And the best thing that happened to me, she squeezed his hand gently, was learning that loving someone should never mean losing yourself. The sun slowly disappeared behind the trees. The children carried their paintings home. Families said their goodbyes. Life moved forward, just as it always does. Ethan and Maya walked toward the garden one last time. The old ceramic coffee mug sat on a small shelf by the art room window. It was still cracked, still imperfect, still standing. Maya looked at it and smiled. Do you think we should replace it? Ethan shook his head. No. Why not? He looked at the little mug for a moment. Because some things deserve to be kept, not because they were perfect. He looked at her with a gentle smile. But because they remind us how far we've come. Together, they walked into the evening, not as two people who had forgotten the past, not as two people who believed life would always be easy, but as two people who understood that love is not built in grand moments. It is built in small acts of kindness, in honest conversations, in showing up, in listening, in growing, and in choosing day after day not to let yesterday steal tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. What do you think was the biggest lesson Ethan and Maya learned? Learning to love, learning to forgive, or learning not to lose themselves? If you enjoyed this journey, please like this video, subscribe to Love Stories by Mr. Johnson, and turn on notifications for more emotional American love stories filled with hope, healing, and life-changing lessons. And remember, the right person cannot heal every wound from your past, but the right relationship can become a place where two people choose to heal, grow, and face life together. We'll see you in the next story.